Good afternoon to all, and thank you very much for joining in this work session named Semantic Interoperability for Solution for Data Space. I'm Pavlina, Fragkou, member of the SEMIC team, and I have colleagues here from Smart Cities, the digital funders, help me, and as well as our contractors. The objective of this workshop is actually to see how we can accomplish interoperability in data space, going from the inception to the implementation, and actually see how we can interoperability is achieved in the different data space and or between data spaces. What are the actual main challenges in achieving interoperability, and which assets, meaning semantic tools, semantic solutions, assets are used in order to accomplish this purpose? So, in order to try to tackle these difficult subjects, the workshop is divided into two parts. The first part, before the break, the focuses on the work that is conducted in the European Commission and how the European Commission tries to provide solutions to those open challenges. And the second part presents the work that has been conducted so far into the different data space. In the slide, you can see the presentations that are being to be conducted during this workshop, the first and the second part. And for the questions, we are going to use Slido. We welcome you to provide us feedback in order to launch a fruitful discussion. So, the first presentation is conducted by Koen Jansen from DigiConnect, which Koen will provide us a short overview of the European Data Act, the cornerstone of data spaces, and how semantics are related. Koen Jansen is a policy advisor at the European Commission with more than 20 years of experience in standardization. So, Koen, the floor is yours.
It's a good suggestion.
Hello. Testing, testing.
Oh.
Yeah, and behind the desk so that the online speakers.
I stay here. I don't move. Okay, because normally I move. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Pavlina asked me to keep it really short, so this will be a very brief overview on Article 33 and a bit more. Just to explain a bit the overall context, in 2020 the European Strategy for Data was published, and the vision behind that is that there would be one European single market for data. So data becomes a commodity or a product or an asset. It is already an asset, but something that you can exchange in a trusted way. To make that a reality, the important work was done on the legislation side. You see there the Data Act, the Data Governance Act, already before that time the Open Data Directive and other legislation that plays a role. And there is also a very big effort over the last years on the funding side, making data spaces come to life. And the concept of data spaces, which is the topic of today, is a concept that is there to stimulate data sharing, create safe environments where data can be shared. And what you could say, I think we all know the open data world with the data europa.eu portal. This is open data, and there the model that is chosen is more like from the public sector data to publish data in a catalog. Here we're talking more about a marketplace, and the data is not open. It is restricted. So you need also to solve the question of how do you create a trusted environment in which data can be shared between parties, and also how can you incentivize parties to share their data. So that's what's behind also the regulations as well as the funded programs. You see here 14 areas where funded initiatives have been undertaken. I won't call them out all one by one. And of course, there are also industry-driven initiatives that are definitely also part of the whole vision. It is not only funded work that is can call itself a data space. We have some the risk here, and we're talking about interoperability and semantics, is that you would get data silos rather than data spaces. So there is also a lot of work ongoing to make it interoperable across. And that one of the examples there is the Data Space Support Center. That is, as the word suggests, supporting the data space initiatives and ensuring that no wheels are invented, and also to develop common approaches. Important element, the deliverable they developed is the blueprint. And then there's also the Data Innovation Board on a more strategic level. And then on the technical infrastructure side, it is a bit more than technical. We find the standards, but also other elements, such as the SIMPL project that will be explained later on by one of my colleagues. So that's the overall vision. Now zooming in on Article 33 of the Data Act. Now the Data Act has many elements, but one of them, Article 33, talks about interoperability in data spaces. And I have highlighted here the aspects that are related to semantics. So there is, you must be able to find, access and use the data, and the data structures, data formats, vocabularies, classification schemes, anyway, the whole list there need to be available. And why is that? Because if you get just a bunch of bytes and you don't know what the data is about, then you still can't do anything with it. So that's the vision. So Data Article 33 also has this notion of essential requirements. That really links back to this single market concept. And it also, in the article, it mentions that harmonized standards should be created to support this. And this is currently in process. We are currently the standardization request has been submitted, is in consultation phase with the European standardization organizations and other stakeholders. I won't, or I even can't share the entire text of that standardization request with you, but looking at the semantics aspect, this is what's written or what's kind of present in that standardization request. So it asks for selection criteria for trustworthy data models, vocabularies, etc. So basically a kind of quality standard for ontologies, vocabularies. It doesn't ask to develop a new ontology. That's not the point. It's more about selecting what are solid ontologies that you can safely invest in, do mappings against in the long run. And the other point it mentions is the documentation requirements, which is sometimes a bit neglected or not mentioned, that it is nice to have a great ontology for a data space, but if the data itself is not annotated or documented and is not linked to that ontology, you are still have some friction in the data market. So this is why we are calling also for a clear way to document your shared data. We all, I think, know JSON-LD, that you can, of course, transform data to a very rich syntax that supports all that, but that's not really the only way that should be supported. You have a lot of other formats like CSV files, XML, whatnot, and they're just important to be able to have this metadata layer to make sure that it's linked to ontologies, vocabularies, etc. And in that way, the ever more powerful integration tools will be able, you remove basically friction from the market. But that's pretty much the one on semantics. There are 4 other deliverables in that standardization request, but this is, I think, where I will leave it to not run over time. Thank you for your attention.
Are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah, hello. There is something that I didn't notice is that the catalog of assets in the Article 33, in the list has to be public. Can you so can you go to the slide? Previous one. Here, data structure, data formats, where available shall be described in a publicly available. I'm just surprised because I've heard of some data spaces that you only provide the catalog if you belong to the data space. They are not making publicly available.
It's a good point. The exact interpretation of the word publicly here, I will have to consult my colleagues that are closer to the legal text. I can't help you there, I'm afraid.
If you can maybe just state your name first for everyone.
Okay, Penny Labropoulou. Just to comment on that, the exact bullet is about the data structures and data formats vocabularies to be publicly available, not the data sets themselves.
No.
Yeah.
Even that, they don't make it public if you don't belong to the
The data, the vocabularies, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's something we should definitely look into.
Let me repeat for the people online. So this data space tell you you cannot list anything if you don't belong to the data space. Everything is private, including the catalog and the structure.
Other questions from the audience? Maybe first your name, please.
Hello, my name is Julian Rojas, a postdoc researcher from Ghent University. Something that I noticed that is always missing from legislation, but also from data spaces documentation initiatives, is standardization of how the interfaces to actually exchange data in practice, because you can agree on the data model, on a semantic model. That's great, first step, I think. But then when comes the time to actually system A needs to query system B for some data, the APIs or the documentation are always talking about REST, GraphQL, but never like a concrete protocol or interface description that we could all agree to do something about that. Do you have a comment about this?
Well, I know that concepts such as connectors are emerging in data spaces, so that is the technical side of it. For me, yeah, that's an important element, obviously, the technical side, but there is also more the business side or the functional side. And there's a project, and it's also kind of addressed in the standardization request, called Trusted Data Transactions, that tries to come up with criteria for what needs to be taken care of in order to do this in a trusted way. It is more than just technical. This is my point there. And there's a pre-standardization workshop ongoing called Trusted Data Transactions that is working on these criteria for trust. And then, of course, that needs to also be translated on a technical level. And there, yeah, a lot of work has been happening already in the data space community with various protocols and, as I said, connectors.
Just to add to your question, I think also Connect is working on the SIMPL, which is for the European common data spaces. And the idea is to provide an infrastructure to make those data spaces interoperable.
Yeah, thank you for that addition, because I had already mentioned SIMPL earlier, but now I didn't think of course, that's a very important aspect as well. Yeah.
Getting into the polemic. So the point is that in the Data Space Support Center, this has been discussed. I mostly agree that something should be good, especially because if we are going to federate data spaces, they need somehow a protocol for interchanging data, not only the control protocol, but also a data exchange protocol. But this is not the case right now. So they are leaving this open, so you can have a REST API, a stream, whatever. What will happen? I guess that if we have a recommended standard for REST or a recommended standard, it will be good. But this, from my knowledge, this is not happening right now.
Yeah, if I, okay, maybe no. Yeah, if I just to replicate on that comment is exactly that was my point, and I think that also leads in the end to interoperability issues, because even if you have the same data models, the same ontologies, if a system don't communicate in the same way, then you break the interoperability solution.
Just a comment about the APIs. We should take care about innovation. So right now you mentioned transferring data, but the future is to process data in the premises. So a type of API where you send the code thanks to AI and the data is processed inside the silos. So we do not have a standard for this, and we can wait a bit of time to have such a standard.
A little bit of a provocative response here. Would it be possible to have one single API to interconnect everything? Because simply the data sharing landscape is extremely diverse, and trying to squeeze everything in one standard, also in standardization, it was done like that in the past. It becomes really complex and difficult to navigate. So I'm wondering, maybe we can think here a little bit in the direction of a set of standards that can do the job, as well as what kind of role data intermediaries can have in order to make sure that the different standards talk to each other, as opposed to coming up with one single standard to rule them all. Just a thought.
Last reaction, yeah. Going over.
I agree with that statement, of course. But let's also see what's on the slide is already quite amazing, right? We've been able to get JSON-LD already on there, like in the in these specs, which means that in the Data Act we're going to have RDF in there. This is already a great step forward, and already looking towards where we come from 10 years ago, where we had the public sector information and the Open Data Act by now, that just says put your PDF files on data portals. I think we already come a long way, and at some point we will probably have some kind of API, like a way to put our API needs so that it works for all. I think there the data intermediaries that you're hinting towards, I really like that idea as well, because it stops thinking about you have a publisher and you have a consumer. And this is what we have today, like, what should publishers publish? What kind of API should they host so that everyone, all the possible consumers in the world are happy? And I think that's just that's just infeasible. We cannot let a publisher publish all the possible APIs in the world so that everyone is happy. So here comes in the intermediaries. I think intermediaries should be responsible for finding the right gap in the market to make sure that at the right moment the right API is available, that they can sell against a small fee that will be less than the fee that would require, or that would be less than the money that the consumer would pay to solve the question themselves, probably. Yeah, something like that. Still following? Yeah. Now, I think then for the base API, like the publishers, what should they provide? I think that should be the best API possible, so that we can have intermediaries. So we should not focus on data publishers, an API that would be good for consumers. We should find an API that is perfect for intermediaries. And yeah, I think there are some good SEMIC ideas around here.
And I think that leads us to the next speaker, isn't it? Maybe.
Do we have a question from people that connected remotely? Charlene, do we have?
There are some that cannot read them from the screen.
Okay. Should data.europa.eu portal be a metadata portal for open data as well as for data from data space? Can we leave the question a bit later for the related presentation? Indeed, even if data spaces where data is not open per default, still the metadata could be open.
Yeah, I think this seems to be, well, the first point, the portal, yeah, I think there are different purposes, and also it was mentioned earlier in the concept of data spaces. Each data space can establish its own governance structure, and of course you try to be as similar as possible where you can, identification of participants, etc., having a participant registry. But some things, for very good reasons, are different because of the nature of the domain, and that's where. For instance, what Alberto earlier said about a catalog, that you want your products to be publicly available, that's not also what the Data Act says. It is more about making sure that you can access the vocabularies and the data models, the ontologies. And that I think is quite safe, because without the data itself or even the existence of the product, I don't see a lot of risk there. So I don't think the Data Europa EU portal would be the ideal way for publishing, for managing catalogs for data spaces, to be honest. I think it's a very different setup with a different federation behind it. The metadata part, this is what I think I mentioned just now, that indeed can be open, but it's what is metadata? A DCAT that you have this product in the first place, so that you have this service, that you offer it, that could already be confidential. And that's, I think, where you probably need to draw a line. Cross-border interoperability. Definitely that's the whole idea. That is a single market for data in Europe. So we're trying to make this definitely interoperable across member states or across countries in Europe. All good?
So we are good, I think.
Thank you very much.
And this, at least the first question, give us a very nice transition from a colleague from the publication office, Simon Stoyer, that is going to present us the high-value data set and how data set will play a role in the data space area. Simon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let's wait for the slides. So, high-value data sets, what is it actually? It's a directive which was approved 2 years ago, and a few weeks ago it came into force, which means all member states need to comply to it. And let's look at the legislation, because it's the easiest part. Well, why is it so important? Why is it really good legislation in a way? It's very basic, it's very short, and it gives the groundwork for publishing data in a great way, basically. So, first point, machine readable via API. If we manage to get data sets in an API format, this is already fantastic. It's really great. We go away from all these other formats which have no sense and cannot be really used. We also made them available as bulk download, which is oftentimes very useful if you want to have huge quantities and you just don't want to stress the APIs too much, you just want to get the data. The next point, API documentation. So you need to publish also how to access the data, what you can do with the data, how you access the API, and this is really, really helpful if people want to use the data. And here the last point we highlighted, reuse under Creative Commons, which means everyone knows what to do. The licenses are also machine readable. And then you have certain data sets in really great quality published. So what does high-value data sets have in common with data spaces? And they are not a data space, but I think to a certain degree they are. Because if you have a certain category, everyone publishes it in a similar format, and then you can go across EU member states. You have kind of a space of really great data where you can do comparable things with, or which you can use in apps. So let's look at the 6 categories. So we have statistics, Earth observation, meteorological, geospatial, companies and company ownership, and mobility. So those are the big categories which the Commission and the member states agreed upon. But my impression is that if it works well, if we get those data sets, that it might be increased over time to have those as test cases and to see what can be improved over time. And for us, it's really, really, really helpful. So what kind of activities are we currently doing? So SEMIC defined high-value data sets already in DCAD-AP 2.2. You see it on the right. So for example, we have a HVD category. And this is really interesting for us. If you publish it, your metadata, you put in the property of the category, we can identify it and we can show it, and people can use it. And we did multiple webinars for everyone to agree upon high-value data sets, also how to publish, what to publish. And so far we have 5 member states who publish on data.europa.eu. So it's only a starting point, but it gives already an impression. And what we add on top of it is, so all of this metadata is also translated. And later we will talk a bit about what member states need to do in terms of reporting. So for example, if you go on data.europa.eu, you can click on data, you can click on high-value data sets, and already we have 3,000 high-value data sets. And here you see something from GovData from Germany, and you see the 5 countries which are already publishing, and many more are in the process of publishing. So it's just current state, and it's not final, of course. And also more and more high-value data sets will come over time, and if you can really compare them, if you can all access them via API, it helps developers, it helps users, it helps students, everyone who wants to work on the data. And also, if you publish it with an API, you have done already all the data quality work. So the data cannot be too much rubbish, because otherwise the machine couldn't read it. And here are a few things what we did with high-value data sets just to spark a bit the interest. So we did a few webinars. We visualized high-value data sets from certain countries. And we used data visualization experts throughout Europe, and just to show what can be done with it. We also did a few reports. You can all download them for free. We did a few webinars. And for me, high-value data sets can be like a blueprint for data publishing. And they are it's really handy because it's simple. Everyone can understand it, and you can just do it. But of course, you need to have the right standards. So please use DCAD-AP. Anyway, you have to use it for high-value data sets. For example, like the mobility high-value data sets could be also part then of the mobility data space. So they could also move. So for me, it's all like a decentralized system. So data.europa is just one piece, and with all the other portals in Europe, with all the data spaces. And the best thing is if they are connected and if they can talk to each other, and there's not one platform for everything, but everything can talk to each other, and then you can have different spaces, different levels, and so on. Just as a reminder how difficult it is to get high-value data sets, so I will talk a bit about the harvesting process. I did it already this morning, so I'll keep it short. But there you can see the less standards are applied, the harder it gets for everyone to put the data on the portal. So for example here, just for you to see, we went on the UK portal and we want to have the same metadata on data.europa. And we cannot just take one by one. We have to download the metadata and then upload the metadata. And it looks like an easy process, but thousands of things can go wrong in between. And we only have two real options. So either we harvest, so we take the data, pull, or someone pushes the data to us, which is always better, because then data providers are in control. And I keep it short. So basically, what we do, we have a scheduler which says, okay, every week we harvest this portal. Then we import the data. And then the most important step is here, number 3, we transform it, which means everything what we get, we try to make it into DCAD-AP with different transforming files. And whenever something in the root, so in another catalog changes, our transformer might not work, so we have to adapt it. And it's an endless process to keep those things up to date. And oftentimes they break, so we have to do it again. And if you just use DKDP, it just works smoothly, so there's no problem. Then we register it, we index it for our search, and we translate it. And then steps come on top, so basically you can already see it. Then we validate it via shackle shapes, which also come from SEMIC. We annotate to add certain licensing information, and then we report it so that you can use it for data quality, for example. And basically, this is how such a pipeline would work. So we take it, and then every step is one segment. And here you can see the transforming and importing files and all the different formats we are currently supporting. And of course, if everyone is using DKDP, we can remove them, and it's much easier. Here you can see a few services which we put on top. So that's basically also the reason why we have data.europa.eu, because once we have the data sets on the portal, we can develop one feature and it can be available for everyone. For example, like data citation, which is a really handy tool. The last point is for reporting high-value data sets, and this is mostly with Digit, because every member state that's also in the legislation needs to report on their activities. And we also think this is quite clever, because then you have an incentive to publish, and everyone is engaging. And basically it just says this is what the report should contain, specific the data sets, and also the API information. And it's basically a SPARQL query, and member states run it, they get their information back, and then we have information for all of those things. Do they offer bulk downloads and so on? Do they have legal information on licenses? And if it's the case, it's also a nice way to research.
Thank you very much. Simone, questions?
I'm Pascal. Thank you for your presentation. There was a last bullet point about you are preparing a SPARQL query for the reporting obligations. It means the member states, they have to have a SPARQL endpoint to do this.
No, you can run it on data.europa.eu on our SPARQL endpoint.
Okay, so this way.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, because our goal is to have all of those high-value data sets on the portal, and then you just run the query and you get the information. And I think we can...
From the portal.
Yes,
yeah.
and I think we can also do a lot of cool things on top of it, like dashboards where you can explore them by topic, and you can see where they're used and so on.
So you need the DKTP3 because there's applicable legislation.
Yes, high-value data sets were defined in 2.2, but our portal supports already 3.0.
Okay.
But for the queries, Bert is doing them, so it's his work.
Thank you for presentation. I have a question. How we can understand that some data set is high-value data set? We have any criteria?
Yeah, so the list is defined by DG Connect. Is someone here who can really explain the process, maybe? Because it's a bit... Is Mikael here? Oh, okay. Because it's quite political. It's not so straightforward. Yeah, please.
Well, part of PwC here, but we run one evaluation together with DG Connect, not for the current ones, for the potential future ones. And we simply run through a whole process from an impact assessment point of view to estimate what would be the cost and benefits of releasing them. And voila, without entering into the details, the whole documentation is online. So it's published reports.
Yeah. I think that...
It is defined in the annex. We are following the annex. We are following the annex of the high-value data set, and we are creating subcategories with the help of the publication office in order we have the six categories that Simon showed, but they are more detailed in the annex. So we are trying also to clarify a bit, incorporate what is in the annex and incorporate it and define what is a high-level dataset. Make more specific by following the legislation in the annex.
Thank you for your answer.
But I think those were like low-hanging fruits, like statistics, already very defined. Earth observation only works with standards. You know, it's easier to start with something which is already.
It is a higher level. The six categories that appear in the higher level of the regulation. Any other question? No question from the audience. So thank you so much, Simon, because high-level data sets are very important. And we go to our next presentation. Alexander Kochev from the Inspire Directive, and to see how all things are connected. Alex is working on the GRC, and he will present how geographical data are all connected with high-value data set and the different data space. That's why geographical data are included in, considered also as a high-value data set. So, Alexander is a researcher in GRC.
Thanks a lot, Pavlina, for introducing me. Alex Kotsev, Joint Research Center, indeed, with the Inspire Directive Technical Coordination Team. So I did prepare this presentation together with my colleagues Jordi Escriu and Marco Minghini from the same team. What Pavlina asked us to do for this workshop is present the technical and semantic assets from Inspire, as well as something on the governance and be as concrete as possible. So what I'm going to do now is tell you a little bit about Inspire, about what the value proposition is, then elaborate on the community and asset governance, and do several demos. So keep your fingers crossed that everything works well. I would like to demonstrate how things work, and then we will conclude with several ideas on the benefits of location data, the benefits that Inspire can bring to the broader context of data spaces. So, what is Inspire? Inspire is a framework directive that entered into force quite a long period ago, 17 years ago to be precise. Then it was transposed into the legislations of the member states, and it's under implementation since. Now there is an upcoming revision under one of the initiatives which are communicated within the context of the Green Deal data space, the so-called Green Data for All initiative, which actually aims to revise, to take stock of what worked well, what didn't work so well, and actually to make sure that with a forward-looking perspective, there is an instrument there that can facilitate the sharing of information on the environment. Looking at the stakeholder side of things, there are currently more than 7,000 data providers that have connected their data to Inspire. Those data sets, through the metadata, are also being reused by the open data, the data.europa.eu that was presented. Those are also reused on the national level by the open data catalogs. A governance structure, there is a permanent body there that is chaired by the Commission with representatives of all the member states, with a technical and a political arm. There's a community of adopters, open source and proprietary vendors, and quite a prominent role of standardization with geospatial standards, the Open Geospatial Consortium in particular, ISO, and the W3C. In terms of data, the value proposition, here we're talking about roughly 120,000 data sets that are currently exposed and made available through the geoportal. And then something which I think is important also for the data spaces is monitoring of the process of implementation. There are certain KPIs that we obtain in a semi-automatic manner. I will get to that in a few seconds. Something on the actual semantic and technical assets. So we have this transparent approach, which is community-driven. There are 28 GitHub repositories which basically contain all of those assets. There are technical guidelines which actually deal with horizontal aspects, things like metadata, network services for downloading and viewing the data, and how to encode the data. And then there are team-specific, so how to actually encode the data, which is allocated to one of the Inspire data themes. Think of addresses, think of cadastral parcels, water bodies, elevation, etc. Data models, we have UML models, so conceptual models, which are encoding agnostic. There is also XML application schemas and other encodings are possible. I will explain a little bit how that works in practical terms, as well as several open source components that have been developed by the JRC together with the community, which are available for reuse. We will have a demo on those. But how do we govern? Just a few words here without entering into the details. So the assets, as mentioned there on GitHub, and anyone can enter, actually can open an issue and create a change request, which is then evaluated by a subgroup with member state representatives and the Commission. So we evaluate these requests. Then in this decision tree that you see on the left side, the request can be returned back to the one who proposed it with the suggestion to modify, to add additional information, or it can be rejected. And then, depending on what the subgroup decides, there is a workflow defined. Everything happening again on GitHub with the scrutiny body, with the voting process by the member states, and ultimately also endorsement or rejection of the change proposal. So this is how we keep the actual assets up to date. So this is for the existing assets. And then we have this concept of good practices. Good practices in Inspire have to do with new technical developments. For instance, if there is a new standard, a new encoding format, like in the case of geospatial information, GeoPackage or GeoJSON, then anyone again can propose such a good practice from the community. But he has to also provide implementation evidence. So in order to keep it real, we're not talking here about abstract suggestions, but as part of the workflow, as part of the proposal, one has to actually provide links to implementations, endpoints, examples, and then give visibility also and make sure that this content and this approach is reproducible by the broader community. Here we have quite a few such good practices already endorsed by the community, having to do with encoding of the data, but also there is GeoDCAT AP. Now with the high-value datasets, there is work ongoing together with, thanks to SEMIC here and again with colleagues from the member states for aligning the geospatial part with the high-value datasets. Software components. I would like to mention three things. Here we have a geoportal, which is the front end, actually the entry point to the infrastructure. We will do a demo of that. There is a reference validator, which is used for validation of data, metadata, and services, so ensuring certainty in the community that the implementation is correct, as well as the Inspire registry, which has to do with the exposure of content in a persistent manner and governance of code lists. So looking into the data discovery part or this geoportal, which is the central view access point to the data, What we have here is a system which is based on GeoNetwork. GeoNetwork is an open source component, which is heavily used also by the member states, and we are using the same on the European level. So this is the solution that actually harvests the endpoints in the member states and provides this perspective of the data. And let me show you how that works very quickly. Okay, so basically, this is something that we do together with the member states, where we actually, there is one endpoint per member state in most of the cases, where we actually go to that endpoint and harvest all the content. As mentioned, 120 roughly 1,000 data sets that are documented. And then we have also access to the metadata itself, and there is a bounding box because we're talking about location information, all the content here, as well as if the providers have made available APIs or means to download the data. There are also the links that can help one download the data. So this is the GeoPortal. And moving on then very quickly to the next items. The registry that was mentioned, so this is the central, what we have here is a central instance which exposes 11 registers with content that is needed as part of the infrastructure. And the software is open source. It's called the registry software, available again on GitHub. And what we see is more than 10 currently implementations in the different member states that use it in order to govern their own code lists. And I would like to play a very quick video here that will show you a little bit more about the registry.
And terminology in your data exchanges and applications. Are you tired of searching over and over again for the permissible values? Missing a way to point at them, checking whether you are using the correct or the most updated version? Registry helps you streamline these tasks. Registry offers a central repository for consistently managing and sharing terms, concepts, and, in general, any kind of reference codes across communities and organizations. Users can easily search, browse, and download registered content in different formats and languages. Content can also be easily accessed and reused in an automated way, enabling its consumption and exchange between systems and applications. Organizations may find in Registry an easy way to manage semantic assets, even in international contexts, following best practices and international standards in the field. Unique identification of registered items ensures control their changes over time, allowing you referencing any of their different versions. Registry also incorporates formal collaborative workflows to manage change proposals transparently, including in complex organizational settings. The registry is a highly reusable, open-source interoperability solution supported by the Digital Europe program. Initially developed to support the European spatial data infrastructure, Registry is widely used by the geospatial community and is now available to any organization needing to ensure semantic interoperability. An increasing number of users and communities are already benefiting from it. Curious to know what Registry can do for you? Download the software now. Want more? Whether you are a user or a developer, join the Registry community to learn. Get support and contribute. Registry. Sharing meanings, connecting minds.
Okay, then the final thing I want to mention in terms of open source components is the reference validator, which, as already mentioned, is used for validation of metadata services and data. And it actually provides provides an instrument for all the data providers to check what they're exposing and sharing within the infrastructure. We have a central EU instance that is running at the JRC, as well as Docker containers that can be reused on the national level. Several member states are already heavily using that. What you see here is this graphic which provides distribution of the requests that we have for the past 2 years. What we have is for the central instance in between roughly 100 and 300, 350 requests per day. And as you see, there are certain peaks which actually correspond to the periods where we do the monitoring. So this is where we actually calculate the key performance indicators when we see more activity. Demo of that component very briefly. So what it actually does, let me go to the browser. One has to choose whether metadata view service or download service or a data set will be validated. Once this is done, then there's a captcha here. Let me do that. Let me refresh that. I think it's the old. Okay, the lower 32 and 27. Okay, so that would be 27. Okay, so now I can upload a resource here. For instance, a metadata record, and then I start a test. And while the test is running, I will just show you what will happen in the end. So there are certain executable tests that are run on top of this metadata record. There are certain conformance classes which are already defined for Inspire, and then we see that after the whole process goes through, from all the tests that are performed, there is 1 out of 3 in a specific conformance class which is failed, which allows the provider then to revisit the metadata or the data set or the API, change what is necessary, and then rerun again. So it's always an iterative process, and this leads gradually to an improvement of the content that is being exposed. And this indeed provides certainty. So the way in which this works for Inspire, I think, might be something to be thought of also for by the data spaces in general. Okay, so moving on then to the presentation, if it starts. Okay, so a few words about the monitoring. There is a commission decision for the monitoring. So every year on the 15th of December, we take snapshots of all the member state endpoints. We take all the metadata there and start calculating the key performance indicators. The workflow based on this harvesting, we basically calculate the number of data sets that are available, how many of those are viewable, how many are downloadable, and the level of conformity. So we also use the validation. We look into the encoding of the data. And we repeat this every year on the 15th of December. What this shows is actually the overall performance for 2023. Green means that there is more data than in the previous year. So what we see this every year when we take this snapshot, there is gradually more data being available. Of course, this is sometimes a little bit of a slow process, but we really see that when there is more green, this means that the numbers are growing for that particular indicator, which is defined in the Commission decision. If there is red, this means that there is a decrease, which opens a dialogue with the member states, and we can again, in an iterative manner, work with them in order to make sure that more data and data of higher quality is being made available within the infrastructure. Final thing, a few thoughts about the benefits of all of this for data spaces. First, I think these are mature tools, well-established processes. There are lessons learned of what to do, what not to do from the 17 years of implementation. We have been publishing articles, JRC Science for Policy reports on those matters. So I think there is something to be learned from this process. The tools themselves are reusable. They're content agnostic. so they can be deployed and used by the different data spaces. There are some examples where we're working actually with the smart cities within the context of the so-called minimal interoperability mechanisms. There is one which is dedicated to location information. We are going to hear in the next session, I think, about that particular topic, MIMS, but there is a close collaboration between Inspire. We're trying to actually feed all of those lessons into the MIM, which is dedicated to location. Some of the data in the agricultural data space as well is made available through this infrastructure. Agricultural parcels from the Common Agricultural Policy are there. Green Deal, of course, this is central to the Green Deal data space, but also some of the information has to do with mobility data space. There is the road infrastructures, railroads, waterways, etc. Also, there are data sets on those topics, and of course, health. Geospatial data also is important to mention is horizontal. There's no geospatial data space, of course, but the sole fact that data can be linked to one way or another to a particular location in space creates the opportunities to integrate with other data. So I think there is a strong case to investigate the role of geospatial data as a means to integrate data independent of where it actually comes from. So I think it would be interesting to discuss whether we need something like a location strategy or how to leverage actually on those developments and location information for the data spaces. And with that, back to you, Pavlina. Thanks for the attention.
Thank you, Alex. I think it is obvious to everyone how important is the geospatial information, how cross-cutting and reusable can be, but we can also see that Inspire the Directive has also the knowledge that in terms of semantics that they gained all over the years. So any question from the audience?
Thank you. I have a short question. I don't clearly understand. The Inspire approach only about data sharing or about data storage or processing as well?
It's mainly about data sharing. Actually, the data stays where it makes most sense. Usually this is on the provider level. Not always, but in most cases. And then we provide access to it. But we don't over-centralize. We don't download. We just provide access to it. And it's a federated system distributed with those 7,000 plus providers through metadata. Then there are, on the national level, metadata services that expose this. And then we access those metadata services and provide an overview of the whole infrastructure.
Thank you. Understand.
Hi, Alexander. Can you elaborate a bit on how you collaborate on the reference data with the publications office, because there are probably some code lists, etc., that are shared or common? Is there any activities ongoing to ensure that they are cross-referenced, etc.?
Yeah, good question. And we have also colleagues here from the publications office. We're, of course, in regular touch here. The registry that was mentioned is one way of doing. Of course, there is another way of doing, which is the Workbench tool. And I think there is a good way of synchronizing those two different approaches. The way in which we have developed the registry is open source. It was created years ago for the needs of the geospatial community. What we have done now is, because we can not actually, it's an open source product now. It's shared with the community. Because it's geospatial, it is contributed to the Open Geospatial Foundation, OSGeo, which is also engaging the community around it. And then I think there is a way also within the code lists to provide the hierarchical, some of which can be dealt with by the publications office, some of which can be dealt with by us. No issue here from a technical point of view. And we actually have two solutions that can do the job. So this is the answer in short.
Hello, I'm Willem van Gemert from the Publications Office. So I can confirm we are in close contact. But I think one of the issues that you had with the code lists in Inspire is that they have been defined in the regulation. So you had some, let's say, less flexibility in evolving them, and also Inspire is already a long process. So you have them since a very long time.
Indeed, some are defined regulatory in the legal acts. Indeed, some are not. So there's a different way of dealing with those. So if they're not, it's indeed a lot easier to do. And we have a governance process as the one that was shown on change proposals. But of course, the ones that are in the regulation are more complex to actually update and change.
Pascal. Thank you, Alex, for your presentation. I like very much the aspect you say it's horizontal. And I can tell you I've got a problem with the high-value dataset 6 categories, because when you say mobility, well, it's geospatial. When you say environmental is geospatial. When you say remote sensing, it's geospatial. And I can tell you that also in health, data is geospatial. Most of the data is geospatial. The issue we can see, it depends on the community. If they have a good experience in managing geospatial data, I mean, the definition of what is geospatial data with geometries, with lat-long definitions, projections, and so on. And you see here, we have with the Inspire, because 2007, so 17 years ago, we have a data space which is very mature, which has clear processes, which has operational tools, and I think I was in a meeting yesterday, and someone from health asked, is it true that the people from geospatial, they are very advanced into data spaces? And I replied, yes, of course, because you have all this experience of implementing Inspire with the member states, and this aspect is also very important, bringing the tools, the right tools to the community as open source solutions. That's fundamental to my point of view.
Yeah, indeed, thanks, Pascal, for the. It's more of a comment, I think, right, than a question. But indeed, geospatial is very powerful, and I think truly believe in the power of location. And in a way, those of us who have been dealing with geospatial professionally for years actually probably have been doing a data space or a prototypical data space without actually calling it one.
And let's take the last question from Timo.
Yeah, just very quickly. Hi, Alex. Timo from OASC. You mentioned when you were talking about the reference validator that it might be useful for data spaces in general. I'm very interested to hear a little bit about your thoughts, how you see this and the interoperability test bed in general, but especially how you could envision the governance being done, because obviously different data spaces, lots of vocabularies, lots of different kind of testing. Who is doing what in this ecosystem, ideally?
Yeah, good question. Not a very easy one to answer, actually. But I think the first thing to do is to have an enabling technology, I think, that can actually do the job. Because now we are starting with more basic things, I think, how to establish the data spaces, how to make sure that the data is out there, what kind of governance. And only a little bit later, I think, will come the validation, because we should have something to validate, actually. So it comes a little bit later in the process. But one thing for sure, each of those data spaces, and this was also in the coordination and support actions, did come up with a blueprint and a lot of ideas on the governance. So I think the answer to your question is somewhere within this governance context, validation has to be taken into account. And then having those tools that can actually do the job, the registry is one of those. There are many other ways of doing. I know that OASC is busy and also elaborating on validation for several of the MIMs. So then the governance structure in the data space has to, in a way, take ownership of the validation tool and actually offer it. One way would be to offer it to the community so that they can deploy it in their infrastructures and like a stamp, and then self-declare and show that they validate the data. Another one might be to have a central instance for all the data space actors where they can then validate. Each and every one of the participants can validate against the requirements.
Good. Thank you so much, Alexa. I don't think we have any. Do we have any other questions? If we don't, we proceed to the next presentation from our colleagues from DG Connect. You already heard at the beginning the SIMPL infrastructure was discussed. We have Leah Roll Echevarria, Dominique Rollins, and Jean-Paul Guillemot working on the project of SIMPL for DG Connect, and coming from also from contractor companies to present the open source secure middleware that will support data access and interoperability among European data space and other cloud-to-edge federation. So the floor is yours. I know that we are a bit not on time, but I don't want to interrupt this very fruitful discussions and questions that you're raising.
So let me get the clicker, please. Thanks. Okay, so, oops. No, I need a presentation. And I should click where? Ah, okay, the green button. Sorry, yeah. Okay, so this was the wake-up call. Okay, so we will be structuring the presentation in 3 blocks. So the first one will be mainly a context policy of why SIMPL is being developed. My colleague Dominique will present the scope of the demo that later on will be presented by our main contractor, Jean-Michel. As a notice, this is a demo of 6 weeks, so 2 sprints. We started the project in January 2024, and we've spent the past months working on the requirements. So what is SIMPL? So SIMPL is a smart middleware platform that aims to support the European cloud policies. We have the European cloud policies that say that cloud is not sufficiently adopted, and therefore we would need to acquire 75% of cloud uptake plus 10,000 apps nodes. And one way in which we could achieve this is with the delivery of European data spaces. You've already seen this slide by my colleague Koen. It's the same. And here we have, as you see the arrow, the SIMPL. SIMPL is an open source middleware that aims to provide data access interoperability and also to retain control of the data. We have 3 products in SIMPL: SIMPL Open, SIMPL Live, and SIMPL Labs. SIMPL Open is the open source flavor of the solution. SIMPL Labs is the experimental facility that one could deploy to test. And finally, we have the SIMPL Live, which is the actual implementation of the SIMPL Open, and this is going to be done currently in 6 use cases. The most important message that I want you to get from SIMPL is that it's a federated data ecosystem that follows some policies and rules, security, and the data holders retain the access and the control of the data. How can SIMPL help the public sector? Well, we can provide the means to help develop and deploy the data spaces following policies, rules, standards, and as we mentioned, retaining the control of your data. So, sorry, I think I went too far.
Okay, so I will first shortly explain how we are gathering requirements within SIMPL. So as you may know, there was a preparatory study for SIMPL where the first requirements were collected. Of course, we're listening to the data spaces. We did then, and we continue to do that. As Leo was saying, we started the project really in January 2024, and we are working since then and continue to working on the refinement of this first set of requirements. But of course, these requirements need to evolve, and we will continue to gather requirements from the data spaces through the SIMPL Live projects, but also by publishing the requirements. So shortly, the SIMPL open requirements are organized in a hierarchical way. We first define the business processes. I will shortly explain a bit more about these. They are refined in high-level requirements, which are more or less the different steps in the business processes, which are then again further detailed to come to clear requirements that can be implemented. And then we go into the cycle of defining user stories, etc., that can go to the development team and start working on the implementation of the different requirements. This again summarizes a bit the idea, very important. We start identifying requirements, we elaborate them, we validate them. They can go to the development team, but it then is published also, and we have this continuous feedback cycle where we want to get input from anybody interested in SIMPL and identify new requirements. So it's not a one shot, we want to continue to working on the requirements of SIMPL. The main actors within a data space and a data, or as we are defining the business processes currently. First one is a data space governance authority, who, let's say, is governing, of course, and operating the data space, but also defining the rules that are to be fulfilled to participate in the data space, and also to publish your services on the catalogs. The second main group of actors are the providers, who will publish and share their services. We will foresee providers that can provide data, applications, and infrastructure. And then finally, the consumers who want to search for this, these services, access it, and then in the end use it. This is, gives an overview about the processes that currently we are envisaging for SIMPL. Again, it's a first set. We are still working on that. There are a number of processes really for the governance authority. Then there are the main, let's say, day-to-day processes to onboard new participants, to publish on the catalog, and then all the consumer-related processes. And then finally, some more, let's say, management and operational, both from a business point of view as from an IT point of view processes. I will, to introduce the demo in which we will show a simplified version of these processes, I will explain a bit more about two processes. The first one is the onboarding of a provider. So as said already, the Data Space Governance Authority will set the rules for being able to participate within a data space. And a provider who wants to participate needs to do a number of steps before they can actually work within the data space. So the kind of things that needs to be fulfilled, it can be document data to be provided, but of course also the security to be set up. This is a very simplified picture or schema of this business process. So as said, the data provider will prepare and sign the request for being onboarded, which is then validated, reviewed, and rejected or accepted. Once it is accepted, the data provider can set up the security, meaning he needs to generate the public-private key and submit requests for credentials, again, to the governance authority, who will provide then the credentials to the data providers. And at that point, he is ready to start working within the data space to publish its services on the catalog. So the second business process that we will demonstrate is the publication on the catalog. So providers can, as already said, publish their resources on a data space catalog by providing a resource or service description, a metadata set, let's say. The resources can be data sets, applications, and infrastructure. And once the resources are published, of course, they are discoverable by the consumer, which in the end is the objective. Again, a very short view on the process and the different steps that you will also see during the demo. So the data providers prepares the data set description, signs it. It is submitted to the Data Space Governance Authority. Of course, this will be automated. It's not a person who will do that. There will be a validation, syntactic, semantic, and also the Data Space Governance Authority can ask to comply to a number of quality rules, which can be much broader than that. Once it's validated, well, the data set gets published on the catalog and it is discoverable by the consumers. So I think, oh no, last point, I always forget this one, but very important. So SIMPL is open source. We already mentioned that several times. Already now you can find the requirements that are being elaborated and that are already elaborated on the Futurium website. The link is here. And the codes will be published in code.europa.eu. And here I really give I give the hand to Jean-Michel, who will present shortly the first developments that we have been doing within SIMPL.
Thank you, Dominique. So my super secure laptop was not able to connect to the hotspot. So it's online, so we can do it from Justine's laptop. But I will need the onboarding. Let's start with the onboarding. So I will, as Dominique explained, we are going to first show an onboarding process in 2 steps. First, an applicant that wants to register to a data space. So voila, this is basic front end. So let's put whatever data. So can be DG Connect, for example. Yes, okay. Yes. Thank you, that's better. No, it's gonna be okay. So let's take, for example, the data provider. Okay, I can create credentials. Did not work. Test. Doesn't work. This laptop, sorry. I'm not. No, it's. Okay. So let's try. Sorry. Let me here in internet. Okay.
The internet by switching off. Sorry.
All right, let's try again. Yeah, test at whatever, it's just test email.com. So take whatever DG Connect, okay, and select one data provider, okay. Then I hope now it should work, so I can go to my application. Okay, sorry, I forgot to do something, so I need to refresh. I needed to save my credentials, so sorry. I forgot to copy paste, so I need to restart from the beginning. Okay. Okay, let's start again. That is the nice with the live demos. So we can put whatever here. Let's try again to create credentials. Voilà, so now I need to save my credentials here. I don't know what I it's not going well, sorry. I'm a bit
I think but I can help here. Close.
yes, okay, voilà.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I can here upload upload a fake. Okay. Where did you put
Here with documents.
documents?
SEMIC. And then
All right, and I can submit my application form, which is obviously a fake one. So here you have, I can see the state of my my progress. And then the next stage is to have a notary role in the governance authority somewhere. Okay, so here I need to have the password, which is a bit more difficult. Sorry for that. So. Here I have a bit more complex password to type. Sorry by this cumbersome work, but all right. So here I should be logging into the, of course, timeout. Okay, yes, maybe we can help me out. This is the password, yes.
I'll type it just
M2M. Right, doesn't want to log.
In the meantime, are there any questions for our colleagues of DG Connect regarding SIMPL?
Ja, weer U, maar de hoofd U.
Yeah, no worries. Hello, I'm Tanguy from IMEC. I was wondering if there is already an overall architecture and a mapping of all the different components that are out there, like the Gaia X clearinghouse, all the Eclipse connector components, the type of approach you would like to use for the catalog and all these things. And also, if one would be setting up a new data space, what type of horizon should be taken into account regarding SIMPL? In other words, should we wait until SIMPL components are out there? And if so, until when?
So I will start with the first one. So the first one is, have we chosen or have we done this technology matrix? This is a work in progress. This is currently one of our tasks. So my colleague Dominique presented the agile methodology, but we're following a similar approach for the architectural solution. So as we are developing the different features, the different components for the MVP, for the minimum viable product, we are deciding which are the main, or with the contractor, we are deciding which are the main components that we want to use. For that, we are developing some technology matrix to have some informed, objective decisions. So that's, as we progress, we will be publishing them. I would like to mention also that this is so the decisions that we are taking now could evolve in the future. So we are taking the decision now, taking into consideration the maturity of the components that exist right now in the landscape. But it could be that tomorrow something revolutionary comes out, and therefore we can take it from scratch, incorporate it in SIMPL and extend it. One thing is clear, we are not limiting ourselves to just one solution. We want to have multiple solutions for one problem. With respect to the second question, as you know, SIMPL Open as such is a 3-year-long program. SIMPL Open will be going until the end of 2027, no? 26. And we will be releasing a code. At least official releases are every 3 months, or minor releases. Major releases are every 6 months. We have the MVP, the first MVP, so minimum viable product, foreseen for December, and therefore you could already download some of your components there. Of course, it's a minimum viable product, so it's not by far no commercial product, let's say, but yeah. However, with the MVP, what we do expect is to gather enough interest in order to have the community also contributing to our open source community. So it's not that we are developing just by ourselves. We want also to have some merge requests, some forks, etc., so that we can also incorporate additional components and resources that we are not able to develop. Also because, we have our own agenda, let's say, our own strategy, and we don't know everything, and we are expecting the community to help us in this respect.
Any other question?
Yeah.
Okay. Timo.
Thank you. Very quick question again. This is Timo. I have a question about the gathering of requirements. So you have showed a slide which consists out of business processes and high-level requirements, detailed requirements, and user stories. Afterwards, you said that there will be an iterative development process and a feedback loop. So that sounds like agile development. How do the owners of the user stories make sure that they are part of the development team and can participate in the sprint meetings and so forth?
So you mean the outsiders? So let's say the people that are contributing to us, or the internal developers? Because the internal developers are involved in the meetings. So the way we are structuring the meetings is we have the commission, and we also have the team of Jean-Michel participating in the meetings where we discuss the requirements and also the user stories, right?
But the owner of the user story, so the owner of the problem, how can they be involved in the development cycle? So the owner of the problem is probably, I'm thinking about the data space for smart and sustainable cities and communities, will be a civil servant with a problem. How are they developed continuously throughout the feedback cycle? How are they included in the development cycle?
Not at this stage, because at this stage we're still developing the open source middleware, let's say. I'm not sure I'm following your question, maybe.
I'm not sure either, but is it about setting up a specific data space, your question? Or is it about development of SIMPL Open itself?
It's simply about the definition of requirements and how can the owner of the requirement be sure that the development is going to solve the initial problem. But okay, let's take this maybe after, during the coffee break, we can discuss this further.
So we have defined our own definition of done, etc., where we have this acceptance criteria and exit criteria. So if you're asking for the software engineering process, let's say, that's defined. So already in the contract, we had definition of done, needs to be consistent, needs to be the code coverage, the test, etc., and we have to verify that the user stories implement what they should implement. And the developer is involved in that, because we have also, so we have actually two levels of user stories at this stage. We have one level of user story that is more high level, and then we have one that is more related to the developers, which are the enablers, so more like the tasks that the developers get. And those are assigned to the main user story in epics.
Okay, just going back to the previous question about the software components that already exist, like the Eclipse firmware connector, verifiable credentials, etc. For the MVP, have you already used some of these? And if yes, which ones? What was your experience in using them?
So for the experience in using them, we should ask Jean-Michel's and Jean-Michel's team. But we have been using, for instance, the self-description definition by Gaia-X. That's the only definition that we have out there that we've seen in the literature of how to define participants, how to define service offerings, etc., in a machine-readable way. Okay, so that's one of the baseline that we have been using. We have been also using the federated, so the XFSC, because
Catalog,
that's
yes.
what we have seen. It's one of the only force components out there that is actually implementing these kind of solutions. So that's why, in terms of maturity, that was the only one that we could choose. For the authentication authorization, it's based on Keycloak.
That. So I'm not able, I'm a bit blocked with my demo, I'm really sorry. But still I have done the demo this morning. So for example, here I can do a test search on data items that are available, that have been uploaded. So the catalog has been loaded with a definition, and then you can define, the provider can define the items on that definition, sign them for trust, and then upload them in this interface. So that is talking with the API of the catalog, and so you can then display the items that are available. So that's the functionality that is now in place. This is in our OVH dev environment, directly the output of the sprint last Friday. I think you were able to see the demo, so I'm sorry. For today, my laptop is too secure and I cannot do it with my laptop. So I can maybe complete just the onboarding process. Here I have the onboard test that I've submitted, and a notary role at the governance side can then approve, for example, or reject, of course. But the goal is that you can approve, so that in the other part here on the onboarding, then I can reload my status and see that my request has been accepted now. And sorry, I'm not used. Yeah. And I can download my credentials and voilà, and see that is the PEM file. It's Notepad misschien dat. Niet altijd misschien. Voilà. Okay. So voilà, I have downloaded the certificate that you can install then on your node to allow the connectivity, the secure connectivity to the governance node or to provider nodes to be used.
So for the time being, we have opted for the solution PKI, so public and private keys. But this does not preclude that we will be extending this with verifiable credentials, with other cryptographic keys, etc., EIDAS, for instance. So we are going step by step. So this is a 6 month demo. So 6 months.
6 weeks, 2 sprints of 3 weeks. So there is the next one now ongoing.
Yeah.
So the next demo.
Yes. And this one has in the back the, for the time being, the XFSC, as mentioned. There's going to be data space connectors also, so the data connectors. We are still in the process of deciding that. And also other standards like ODRL, DID for the verifiable credential, as I mentioned, DCAT AP for the vocabularies. So it's a whole process that is ongoing.
So I think that we are quite ready to start with our second part when we are going to present the work that has been conducted by the different domain-specific data space. And now we are going to present the work that is done by the health data space. So we have with us three colleagues, Melody Bernot from DG Santé, Paul Derrick that works on the Scienziano institution, and Natalia Zelinska, both also working for DG Santé. They are all of three of them going to present the work that has been done in the health data space. So, please come on board and.
Hello. How can I have my slides? Oh, sorry. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Melody Bernot. I'm policy officer in the digital health unit of DG Santé, working on the policy side of the European health data space. And together with my colleagues, Natalia from the IT unit of DG Santé and Pascal, who is one of our main partners from the pilot project for EHDS. We will guide you through the work we have done from inception to first implementation of the Health DCAT application profile, which is an extension of DCAT specific to health. So, the European Health Data Space, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. What is it? The objective is to create a unified framework to facilitate the exchange of electronic health data across Europe, both for primary and secondary use. But today we'll be focusing on secondary use. The idea is to enable large-scale health research, support evidence-making, policy-making, and cross-border collaboration between member states. We will set up with the regulation, we aim to set up data governance rules, technical infrastructure, and facilitate stakeholder engagement. So when we had the first idea to build this European health data space for secondary use, we noticed that the main problem was that we couldn't discover data across Europe. Sorry. So hello, camera. Yes, what is difficult is when you are a French researcher, you cannot find the data that are available in Germany or in Spain. And it's mostly because they are not described in the same way, they are not described at all often, or they are not described in health-specific ways. So the idea to have a health-specific metadata standard was obvious for us when starting the work on the European Health Data Space. It will facilitate data discoverability and interoperability. It will help us to build a common catalog where the data sets are described in the same ways and in the same format. So you will be able to search for them, to find them, and it will be easier to find the data set that you're looking for, and so it will support advanced technologies and everything. So it's a long, long path when you want to build a specific metadata standard. The first idea we had around the European Health Data Space, we asked member states through a joint action, which was called TIDAS, to reflect on what was needed for this European Health Data Space, and they came up with the idea that we needed a metadata standard. So it was a very strong recommendation, and this was included in the regulation proposal in May 2022. And during the negotiation of this regulation, which was adopted by the European Parliament in April, on 24th of April, we started building this standard within what we call the EHDS2 pilot project, where Pascal was a key partner and where he worked on this development of this application profile. As I said, earlier this year, we adopted the regulation, so now it's time to move to implementation. We had a first version of the standard that was given to us through the project. It was approved in June, so it's super, super close to us. And what we will do now is refine the standard within a new joint action, and it will feed an implementing act, and it will be set up for and mandatory for all data holders, health data holders across Europe. And after we have the implementing act and the application of the regulation, we will have the possibilities to make the standard updated and evolve. So why did we choose DCAT to do this metadata standard specific for health? For several reasons. Of course, it's a proven framework. And also, you know that, as you've seen on previous slides today, the data strategy aims to build several data spaces, and they need to be interoperable with each other. The idea is, in the end, to be able to share data across data spaces. So we know that DCAT is a standard that is very widely used, especially in commission and across those data spaces. So having a health extension of DCAT makes sense. So I think I've done my part, and I will now hand to Pascal to give you the elements of the development of the standard.
Thank you very much. I will reflect in the coming slides all the work we have been doing last year in designing a draft version of the DCAT application profile. We did it in the frame of a pilot project, the EHDS2 pilot project, meaning we had a consortium, and I am not of the European Commission, I am Sciensano, the Belgian Public Health Institute. I work as a data engineer. And we had a community working on this application profile. So the project kicked off in October 2022. And we took the fast track line to develop the application profile. We had this morning Alberto mentioning that it's difficult to reach a consensus, and that's really a challenge. But here we are pushing hard to make this DCAT application profile a reality, because we've got a regulation since a couple of weeks. So you see what we have been doing. So in January 23, we defined the requirements, starting with a landscape analysis of the existing health metadata catalogs and health metadata models. We did an analysis of existing DCAT application profiles, GeoDCAT, StatDCAT, a wonderful GRC DCAT application profile. Alex is there. We released a sandbox. I mean, when we say a sandbox, we took DCAT AP and we had for any data holders an environment to play with. And we started to develop or to design the DCAT application profile. So in June last year, we have on board a technical working group, so the domain experts. They have no clue about DCAT. Really, it's a linked data technology. okay, it's more than a metadata standard. And for the community, the health domain expert, it's very important for them to understand the rationales behind DCAT IP. And we started with a workshop, thanks with the support of Digit D2 and SEMIC. So Pavlina, Bernd is in the corridor. Oh no, he's there. Max. We had 2 sessions about DCAT IP. So for the health domain experts, that was really the beginning of a hard exercise. So we discussed also the rules of extending DCAT IP. You know, when you play soccer, there are some rules, otherwise you don't have a game. It's just a mess. So we started these workshops, of course, the summer break, and here the hard work started September to December. Every 2 weeks, almost, we had 2-hour sessions with 80 participants. We have used EU surveys, so we prepared the metadata elements or properties to discuss, and we managed at the end of last year, December, for Christmas, to have a draft version of DCAT IP. So we published the draft version as a W3C respect specification, draft version. So now it's really there for the community. Everybody is welcome to comment. Thank you, Bart, for your nice inputs. So that's, and I would like to really say, when you work on an application profile, you see all the stakeholders. We are building the health data space, meaning we've got the Commission, we've got SEMIC, we've got all actors, the member states, the Public Health Institute, the registries, and so on. Everybody is welcome to help us in shaping the reuse, because we are speaking about the secondary use of health data, meaning sensitive data. It's a serious, difficult exercise. And I like this idea that at different levels, with different competencies, the people, they are coming and they are sharing their understanding, and they try to make something more concrete, more operational. So then, okay, July, where we are now. So we've got a draft version of DCAT application profile. I like this idea of agility. I mean, we start with something, we will show you what we've got as a MVP, but there's still work to do, and we are going to work on this. The TEDAS2 project is already starting to do this. So we are now testing, we are in the implementation and testing phase of DCAT, meaning the sandbox now is the 2B. We have the DCAT application profile in the sandbox, and the data holders who created metadata records based on DCAT AP, now they are able to create DCAT AP compliant metadata records. That's for the story. So you see also we created an editor. You've seen with the presentation of Alex, 20 years of Inspire implementation. It comes with capacity building and tools. Without this, you don't manage to upgrade and train your community to use or to understand DCAT. So we have created an editor. Definition of the requirements. So here, I think it's nice to have a look at this, because it can help the community in understanding what to do when you think you have to work on a DCAT application profile. I must say that DCAT AP 3 is already very nice to achieve the interoperability in the data spaces. But if the community can identify that there's really a need to extend or the DCAT AP with new properties, then you can start this exercise. We are speaking here about health data, your data, actually. all sensitive data. So there's something you don't have. We were speaking about this morning, open APIs to access data. No, it will never be the case for health data because it's sensitive. So of course, for LDCAT AP, we have other requirements. We would like to enhance the discoverability of datasets using DCAT AP, a linked data technology, in our data catalogs. But we need to have a look to the requirements. So here you see what we've done. Identification of the metadata elements by functional groups. You see a huge list. Review of the use cases. As a persona, I want so that. That's a very key aspect because we are serving users and the data spaces is a user-centric approach. I would like to share my data, and chapter 4 of the regulation is about the secondary use of data. So as a user, I want so that. You know this exercise. We had plenty use cases to review. There's also the requirements derived from the FAIR data principles. As a metadata catalog, I want so that. For instance, you have heard about the story of identifiers, and we came up with some new requirements from DCAT about the identifiers. We had also a look to the requirements derived from the EU policies. In first place, the European Health Data Space Regulation. So we look at all the articles and try to figure out what are the requirements derived from the regulation, which will have an impact on LDCAT. We had also a look at the requirements derived from the technical considerations. This morning we discussed about AI. How can we use AI? And you see keyword, faceted, full text search versus semantic search, or natural language processing and general geospatial search, and also the metadata management. So we look at all these aspects, and I do believe that slides give a nice framework how to extend an application profile. So you see it's there published on GitHub, the draft version. The draft LDCAT in a nutshell. So new properties. Let's start. Let's take some key properties there. Okay, analytics, for instance. You see we've got analytics. What it is exactly? You know, if you have sensitive data, nobody will access it. Nevertheless, you can have a dashboard with statistical 5 minutes. Wow, okay. By chance, I've got no demo, so well, I'm dead. Sorry. Okay, new properties, new control vocabularies. We have changed the cardinalities with much more mandatory properties. Okay, you see here in green, easy, 5 seconds to show this. In green, that's the impact of LDCAT on DCAT AP. So up. And I've got key examples, and I'm delighted to invite, well, maybe I can go back to this one. Yeah, you see in the regulation, there's something very interesting and new. There's the metadata management. The metadata records have to be revised once a year. That's great. Now I'm delighted to invite Natalia for the demo.
Thanks. Good afternoon, colleagues. So I have a pleasure today to present the work of mine and my team as an IT portfolio manager in DigiCenter. So we have developed the system which is presenting EU dataset catalog, the one for which we received the mandate in the regulation. And what it is implementing actually, it's this first draft of the half DCAT. I pre-recorded, so we don't have any issues, so I can tell you it's 8 minutes. So please.
Welcome to the test environment of the Health Data at EU, the first release of EU Dataset Catalog. This portal is the gateway to the Health Data at EU infrastructure, which will be operational in 2028, so once the regulation enters into forces, and then it will be providing the key services which are required by the European Health Data Space regulations, such as the EU Dataset Catalog and data permit applications, which are already implemented in the draft version in the release 1. So EU Dataset Catalog and EU Dataset records are the main part of the system. The aim of them is to be able to provide the information about all the health-related datasets available for the secondary use. Those datasets are coming from the member states, from Union, from third parties, and from health-related research infrastructures. These datasets in this portal we will be presenting in the DCAT standard, including its future extension to the health DCAT. In release 1, we have already implemented the first attempt of health DCAT to facilitate further work on the properties and elements which we need, and also on the user interface of the system. So the datasets which we have currently, which is described to the full extent in the health ticket, is this one: linking of registries for COVID-19 vaccine surveillance. And here you can see, when you enter the page dedicated to this dataset record, the description of the dataset itself. Also, you can see which keywords were tagged for this dataset, which team. It's included here, looking at the DCAT, so it's health. The most important part, in my opinion, at this stage are the categories. The categories are stemming from the European Health Data Space Regulation. They are 17 of them, which are saying really what type of data set it is. So it might be the electronic health record, it might be the aggregated analysis or study, or other health-related data. Then we have other very health-specific part and property, which is health teams. So this one, as you can imagine, is related to the vaccines, so viral vaccines and vaccines efficiency. We have also health codes necessary for the researchers to know in which type of the nomenclature they will see the main data set. So here you can see that those data were coded in the ICD of the World Health Organization. Vocabulary, and then we have an information if this dataset includes the personal data or not. If it does, we see what type of personal data are included here. Also, we are seeing the purpose of the dataset, which was provided by its creator. It's the provenance of the data and the population coverage. Once the distributions are available, usually there will be a number of them. It can go into the hundreds even. Researchers, if they are interested in this data set, they will be able to add it to their basket. Also, if there was a sample distribution provided by the data owner, to make it more understandable for the researcher what they can expect as an extract of the database, it will be able to be opened here. The same when it comes to data record analytics, additional documentation on related resources coming with this dataset. On the right side, you will be able to see, or you are already able to see, more of the information stemming from DCAT or new health DCAT properties, such as the acronym of the dataset, the legal basis, number of records in this dataset, number of individuals to which the dataset is being was created from, their minimum and maximum age, health data access body, again the very important property stemming from the regulation, lots of information about the publisher, and very important for the health data, as I said, the coding system in which initial data were coded. So here ICD-10. and the number of other data. And this list might be growing once we will be adding the other relevant properties to the health decade extension. Of course, this information is very important, but the aim of all of this is to enable researchers to apply for the data sets. Therefore, once we will have here hundreds of thousands of data, they need to be easy searchable and filterable. Here in release 1, we already make it possible to search by the words and the free text, and also we applied the filters by each of the important property which we have defined, and then this catalog is being narrowed down. Once I am a researcher and I finally find the list of the data sets which are interesting me, I am adding them to my basket. So I can add as many data sets I wish. And then when I go to the basket itself, I will see the full list, which I can review again and decide if maybe I'm not anymore interested in one of those data sets, and then I can remove them. Once I want to create the application, because I think I'm sufficiently ready, I am creating the new application or adding the data sets to the old application. First, I will see the important information for creation of a data access applications, such as glossary, information, general information about the data access, availability of data in different countries, and other very important information, also including data privacy statement. Then the application is being created for me. And here I just wanted to show you that because of the fact that we have all of the information about the data set in the database, we will be able to pre-fill many of the parts of the database, which will make the application more user-friendly and minimize the risk of the mistakes in the application. So here, all of the information are coming from the database. And then another very important section is section 6, description of the data needed, where everyone needs to give the detailed information for each property and element of the data which they are requesting. And as the data sets differ, we have the same tabs for the different data sets, so the information which the researchers will be providing is customized, and here the data sets are already added and the tabs for them are being generated. And once this application is ready and all the mandatory fields are being filled in, it can be submitted, validated, and sent to relevant health data access body, so the assessment of the application can continue. And this is the work which we have already implemented, working with our partners, and on which we continue working. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. I think that it was very interesting, especially the demo part, and showed the progress of the health data space. Any questions, please, Simon?
So for the health data space, are there like really companies behind where you're in contact with, or is it just?
I don't understand.
Were you in contact with big pharmaceutical companies if they want to join the health data space?
So the regulation is setting up health data at EU infrastructure. With that was the demo of a central metadata catalog. In each country, there will be a health data access body. So we were running in the demo, but it comes from the regulation. And the health data access body will manage a metadata catalog for all data holders in the countries. But maybe, Melody, can you join us?
Yes, thank you. Just to add that the regulation creates a new obligation to all health data holders all across Europe to describe their data sets with this new metadata standard. Exactly.
And just to be clear, it's our data, yes? So every time you go to the medical doctor and your data set will be produced, now not only it should follow the standards for the health data itself, which it's like ICD codes or what I showed before, but the health data will be added on top, so they are discoverable potentially. So it's really changing the national way of doing the systems and enabling the interoperability.
So Health Ticket AP has now like a lot of properties, and do you think they will fill it in? Because even with Ticket AP, I've rarely seen any data set with 50% of the properties, just because people are a bit lazy, you know?
Yeah, okay, I do understand, but if we make this property mandatory, then you don't have a choice. So here you see the you see the challenge. I agree with you. When you look at the Open Data Portal, a lot of metadata records are not rich enough. So here we are speaking about data sets that you can't discover because they are sensitive. There's no bulk download. So yes, of course, we need to improve to have much more mandatory properties. But this is something we will validate with the community, saying, okay, we have a short list of 15 mandatory properties. Do you agree on this? Okay.
Just to add that once the metadata standard will be agreed with the stakeholders and everyone, it will be spelled out in an implementing act. So the mandatory properties will become mandatory, really mandatory for all data holders, as I said, and you will have the obligation to describe your data sets.
That makes it easier.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we push for it.
Alex, and then you.
Yes, I have a microphone already. Thanks, Pascal. First of all, congratulations. This is great work, really solid, and implementation at full speed only a couple of months after the regulation is effect, so well done. My question is about the governance of this, because you mentioned implementing regulation, you make some of the elements mandatory, but if you have to change a property or an element, do you have to issue a revision of the implementing act? Or you will think of some kind of a governance structure that can take ownership and do it outside of the legal? The reason why I'm asking is that implementing act is great, right? Because you hard code it there, it's the law, they have to respect. But then changing this is a little bit difficult.
That's
Thanks.
a very good question. So I was very happy to see your presentation showing, seeing your experience in this field. We have also the project ongoing for the primary health for many years, and we see the value of governance. So I think we already start to establishing this type of structures and connecting relevant stakeholders. As I mentioned, there are 17 different categories, and they are really different types of data, you can imagine. So I think we will keep looking for the proper experts. We are happy we have still 4 years before going live, but we need it. So I just said to Melody before, we need to take a look, and we need to talk because it's good to see these lessons learned. But
yeah, coming back to the regulation, as always, it's my job. Just to say that the European Health Data Space established an EHDS board, which will be responsible to maintain and update all the standards, specifications, guidelines, everything. So they will also play a role, and all member states are represented in this board.
Okay. Okay, my question maybe is, you have presented that you have kind of a semantic search capabilities in one of the slides, and this data that you have presented in the demo looks like you are showing something which is in Health Data AP. But how have you implemented? What is the technical format in which you are storing the data for the Health Data AP? Is this JSON? Is this XML? What is this?
RDF, yeah.
RDF.
Yeah.
yes, some of the, because there is a number, as I said, EU dataset catalog, it's one of the biggest things, but it started in RDF, and as you all mentioned before, it's again the Virtuoso with Elasticsearch. So we use the same implementation as colleagues from Data Europa EU. In Release 0, we actually use your code, so thanks for that. And then we moved back to the Pivo open source, so for backend and frontend, and now I see for backend we stay in Pivo open source. For frontend, I think we will be evaluating to the specific frontend of our needs, but then there will be other types of documents we will be exchanging, and they will be in JSON. But also coming back to your previous question, I didn't take the floor there. For example, on our side, to start this implementation with so many member states, hospitals, and general practitioner, we started from saying that we defined one way of communicating with central services. And we have chosen for this, having experience in this e-delivery, Domibus implementation of Commission Digit, which is using the AS4 secure messaging. And on this level, we will actually code the body of the message and the validation on the message on top of the turtle file, of course, of the Helveticat. And then by the Domibus and the message, we will exchange this format and we will know if we can take it and save it or not. So this is what we are doing because every country needs to connect with the central service by one system. And then what they have at the national side, you are correct. Everyone say APIs, REST ones, and they claim they need it. But once you go into details, everyone needs something else. Therefore, I think we didn't have a mandate to tell them exactly what they need to do at national side. However, we proposed that for the central one, we think it will be e-delivery. But at the same time, we are a bit discouraged to use it at national side. It might be too much. But it really depends on the implementation. But for us, we defined it, so that's why we receive those data sets.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question more on the application form, because that triggers me in the sense that if you're in the, let's say, the session before the coffee break, there was the enabling the trust and exchanging data sets from one party to the other party. So we see here one way of doing by sending out, because of legislation, oblige it to an official body that will provide the access. How much of this is actually general usable, do you think, and could be lead to, let's say, something that can be standardized as an application form or a model into the data spaces general aspect to apply this kind of same idea in other data spaces? To
be honest, it was very challenging to develop this in 2 months, this application form. We received from the colleagues, experts from the pilot, the business analysis and the template in Word document, in Excel, what they would like to see. And it's dynamic conditional formulas, so it's coded. What we will do for our purpose is the back office with the console, when you can change the fields there without going into hard code, because we still have few years of improving. How much this can be reusable, very hard to say. The whole solution, we will for sure, it's an open source. So we develop it as an open source. We will release it every January. Because of the intellectual property rights, this is when we will be acquiring them. So January 2025 is when, up to release 3, everything fully documented with the bill of materials will be given to everyone to use. What we will be doing then, I think it's more interesting, and this is on what we are working with SIMPL, that we are closing this application to the e-delivery message. And this message will be, as I said before, it will be described and it will have a specific format, and this is how it will be sent to pre-configured contact point. And for us, this path is defined in regulation. So there are no deviations of to whom we can send and from whom we can receive. So it's a bit easier, it's closing to 27 plus union plus something, but not hundreds of separate hospitals. So formulas, it will be open source, you can do with the back office, but the sending mechanism also will be open source, and I think this is rather something which might be further reuse the structure of the message.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So thank you very much, colleagues. It was, and we are now going to our next presentation of the language data space. So we have Penny Labropoulou here, and Penny comes from the Institute of Language Speech Processing from Athens, and will present us the work that has been done in the language data space. Penny, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Indeed, a very interesting workshop with many discussions, and I think some of it will come up in my presentation as well. How we envisage semantic interoperability in the language data space, looking first at the metadata level. That's also data, let's not forget it. So first of all, to put this into context, the language data space, why has it come up as a need? We all know LLMs have become the most disruptive breakthrough in AI in recent history. ChatGPT, DALL-E, Llama, name it what you want. It's in our life. It's changed our everyday life. But in order to have LLMs, we need data. We need enormous amounts of data. Not only text, but also audio, video, image. Let's not forget, language is everywhere. Most of the LLMs that we know until now have been trained on English. We need training data in other languages, in other European languages, in other world languages, desperately. And the need, in order to do that, we need a concerted effort for the collection of these amounts of data. And this is where language data space comes in. It's one of the 14 official EU data space projects. Its objective is to develop and deploy a European platform and marketplace for the collection, creation, sharing, and reuse of multilingual and multimodal language data. It's a procurement lasting for 3 years. We're already halfway there. If it's extended, it will be for 1 more year. What are the main features that we want to establish in this duration? It's the governance framework. It's a data space. We need to have an authority that decides who the data space participants can be and how they are onboarded. The technical architecture and infrastructures for sharing, exchanging data sets. We're obviously building upon open principles as far as we can, and we're promoting the LDS principles and the collection of data for all languages. What are our stakeholders? Yes, public administration, research, etc., but we're mainly targeting industry. We want to have new language data. We'll speak about it a little later as well. Data that were not used before for training, but that can be reused from health, from procurement, from the tourism data space. So the target data that we're targeting for, very large data volumes, generic and domain-specific language data. We need generic data so that we can pre-train LLMs, but we need also domain-specific ones for fine-tuning and continuous training of LLMs that can answer, can address multiple language tasks. Machine translation, Gen AI, summarization, Q&A, voice recognition. Think about it, it'll have to be there. As I said, we are looking into collecting in one place already available data sets, usually coming from research organizations, research infrastructures, like the classic corpora that we all know, the classic web crawls that are already out there. But we want to mainly get some new, fresh data from publishing houses, the media industry, the tourism industry, call centers, that were using their data for other purposes. We want them to repurpose them, and that's the idea of monetizing their data in new uses for training LLMs. As I said, any modality, text, audio, video, image, in different languages, both monolingual and multilingual, parallel for machine translation, obviously, in different domains and different communication scenarios. Obviously, the emphasis is on raw data. This is where LLMs are mainly trained on. But let's not forget, we have many annotated data sets processed with, enriched with semantic information like biomedical entities, etc., or polarity, sentiment data sets. We want to also collect and make available to other data space consumers, data space participants, language models. ancillary resources, reference resources like lexica, terminological lists, ontology, semantic lexica that can be used for processing, for enriching data sets. And of course, we also want to be able to collect language data processing services. As I said, the emphasis is on raw data, but we're not disregarding the other types of services. So before data spaces, we were sharing in the language data and language technology community. We have a long history of language data sharing, especially in the research domain. For different types of data sets, for different types of research communities, machine learning communities also sharing data sets and models, even general research repositories such as Zenodos stores data sets and models. And people can exchange data sets through them, but we were also exchanging metadata between all these catalogs and repositories. Until now, usually just mapping and converting. Sorry, how do I go back? The red. Okay. Mapping and converting between the metadata schema that each catalog used. You can see the multiplication of these arrows, and it's not very good. It's not very nice. Okay, it's not that bad. We did have some metadata standards that we used for exchange, the classic Dublin Core and OLAC. We all know it. It's nice, but it's basic. It doesn't have enough rich information to help you discover a data set. A very notable initiative that I would like to point out is the component metadata infrastructure, which is also actually a standard, which allowed data providers to describe their own metadata models in the same way so that they can be reused and seen by other providers or consumers. Very much like the vocabulary hub, but it's based on XSD technology. And it had a little bit of semantics in it, because you could also map your own elements, your own metadata elements, to a concept in the Clarion Concepts Registry. One of the most influential metadata models that have been used in these infrastructures is the MetaShare model that was created back in 2012. It has been used in various infrastructures and catalogs, either as it was or with extensions and focusing on specific data set types. It was also an XSD, and it was converted into an RDF ontology, an RDF-all ontology, by the W3C Linked Data for Language Technology Community Group. So where do we stand now? We revisited semantic interoperability for the language data space, taking into account the new requirements. And by new requirements, what I mean, we needed a simple and flexible metadata model for the new providers that have no clue of our own language data technology jargon. They know nothing about that. At least for the basic properties, we need them to be able to understand it easily and fill in the metadata description easily. Obviously, we want to be interoperable across data spaces. We need to be able to get data sets from the health data space, from tourism data space, from all other data spaces. So for that, we need to take into account the technical specifications that are recommended both by the Data Spaces Support Center, DSSC, and the Data Space Protocol, which is going to become a standard. That's from the IDSA. We wanted to simplify the whole mapping and conversion process between the various catalogs we wanted to have, and take advantage of support tools that are out there instead of creating new ones. A very important thing, it's language data space. We need to have a multilingual metadata model. We will provide, in the end, the LDS catalog in all EU official languages, just like the Open Data Portal does. So we need to be able to support that. Obviously, we need to cover the description requirements for language data and language models, as I said, and allow for continuous updates and enrichments of the model. The world evolves. 10 years ago, when I said language model, I meant a statistical model, not an LLM. And the way we were describing it back then is not the same as we describe it now. So what do we decide to do? Just like with the health DCAT IAP, we opted for a common metadata model based on DCAT and DCAT IAP, because this is what is recommended by the SSC and the data space protocol, DCAT mainly. And we decided to customize it in order to meet what is needed for our own community needs. So we're using DCAT and DCAT IAP for the generic concepts and the meta-share ontology, which was actually inspired in a lot of ways by DCAT for the language data concepts. Where we are right now, very sketchy diagram, we're in version 08, where we have already pretty much decided upon most of the properties for the 3 subclasses of dataset, as we call them: the corpus, the language model, and the lexical or conceptual resource. I think the names are indicative of what they're referring to. We plan to look at data services, data processing services in the next versions. So where do we stand when we compare DCAT AP versus language DCAT AP? We tried to reuse as much as possible the DCAT AP properties, classes, recommendations, and control vocabularies, just like with health DCAT AP, I suppose, was a similar thing. Now, contrary to what the health DCAT AP did, we tried to minimize the mandatory properties. Why? Because our world is not regulated by EU regulations, and we have to make it attractive to data providers. And data providers are very well known for being reluctant to add metadata information. On the other hand, you have the consumer who, in order to discover datasets, and most importantly, to select the datasets and use it. And we're talking in the era where machines are actually also data consumers. We want to have structured metadata, controlled vocabularies. We're pushing for that, but metadata providers are really reluctant in giving them. So we're always trying to manage to balance between the two. We added some community properties, such as, for instance, the subclasses that I said before for dataset, some for the GDPR aspects or for the content, the functions, for instance, that a machine learning model, a language model will perform, zero-shot classification, etc. We need to have that. We changed some restricted, let's say, some data types. So, for instance, for free text properties, DCAT AP says, sorry, I'll try to be faster. Just lang string, we wanted the language tag so that we could perform translation of the metadata descriptions. Mandatory recommended controlled vocabularies, obviously keeping the ones that we can use, reusing, recommending our own vocabularies for language data-specific properties like size units, sentences, tokens, words. Some cases, we wanted to use the EU vocabulary, but the recommended vocabulary by DCAT AP, but we could not do that because, for instance, for formats, file formats, we have a long list of formats that are used in our own community. We could not, and we think that we will try to ask the publications office to add this value and then go back and reuse it. One thing that we could think as data spaces, and not only data spaces, is sharing in a distributed way some vocabularies that are common across data spaces. I'm sure file format is one of them. We keep saying standardization. Just to say that it's not easy to use one standard because there are many standards out there. For language, you have ISO 639.1 with 2 characters, ISO 639.3 with 3 characters. This is the ones that are most popular, and they're actually implemented in various linked data vocabularies. You have also the BCP 47, which allows you to also add information about the region where this is spoken or the script, etc. You have various linked data control vocabularies already, like Lexvoc, Glottolog, or the EU languages named authority list that is recommended again by DCAT-AP. We need detailed descriptions in language data space. It's not sufficient to say English. I need to say, for instance, Brazilian Portuguese, or Greeklish, which is Greek in Latin script. I need to be able to say not just Brazilian Portuguese, but Viennese German, or say that this data set contains data in a dialect that has not been yet documented by ISO. We need also translation equivalents of these language labels. So we decided to go for a mixed approach, where we use our own property for language, which combines the BCP 47 practices and an optional property for language varieties. But because we want to be interoperable across data spaces, we're using another property, the DCT language, with the list of languages from the EU vocabulary, plus the Lexvoc ontology, because the EU vocabulary does not have all the world languages. It's mainly about European languages. This is automatically computed so that the provider doesn't have to put it twice. Okay, so we have the model in version 0.8, and we need to make sure also that it is adopted. One way of doing that is the support tools. The model is right now available in RDF, OWL, and Shackle. The vocabularies are in SCOS. They're publicly available. This is important for us, not only in our data space, as you said before, but across data spaces and beyond that. This is why we're using GitHub and software like Cosmos that allows people to be able to see it and use it and give feedback to us about it in various sources. We're discussing still the governance framework. For the model, we want to be a little bit stricter and have it issued in versions at regular, short intervals, not every 3 years. But this is going to be done by a restricted set of editors based on the feedback we will receive. While for the vocabularies, we're thinking of having a more relaxed governance scheme where we will ask people to be able to collaboratively add their own values to that. We're obviously going to make also available mappings and crosswalks to the most popular metadata models in our community. And we're also going to investigate the vocabulary hub. This is a data space component that allows you to integrate data models and things from the connector, from the catalog. And we have already in our own first version, which is going to be released end of July, already an editor for the metadata model for creating and validating metadata descriptions based on the shackle that we have created. Okay, I know I don't have time, so I'm just going to be very fast about that. We're talking about semantic interoperability for the assets. We're forgetting that semantic interoperability is also there for the licenses and the policies. The data space protocol says ODRL has policy. DCAT-AP has both policy and DCT license. And there are many data sets already out there that are licensed with a proper license. Luckily enough, there are repositories where you can find ODRL representation of standard licenses. We need to do what we do with the new ones. And most importantly, we have to think about the semantic interoperability of the licensing conditions. The legal language is ambiguous. Something that is available with a specific licensing condition in the health data space may not be available for the language data space. We need to make sure that when they have a policy there that says X, Y, or in the procurement spaces, when they say you're allowed to use it, we have to make sure that use it can also mean train a model with it. So skipping that. Yeah, where we stand right now, as I said, we're finishing version 08, we're finishing the documentation. We're going to start looking a little bit more now at data models, and we're going to work a little bit also for the vocabulary hub. And I wanted to stay here with this because I think that we're discussing exchange of data between the data spaces and across data spaces. We need to also exchange, make sure that they're interoperable, also the vocabularies that we use in them, the data models. If a health data set has a specific data model in CSV format, I don't know what, I need to be able to understand this CSV format also in the language data space or in another data space. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Penny, for this very interesting presentation. I hear we have a first question already.
Thank you very much, Michał Bukowski from Poland. Very interesting presentation. You presented vast array of languages which will be included in the data spaces. Do you also consider including non-verbal languages like sign language or braille language?
Obviously, yes, sign languages are going to be there. They're already in all the language data sharing infrastructures we have.
Okay, it would be big experience because there are many sign languages for many nations. Okay, thank you very much.
At the back.
Anthony Zaak from Europeana. I liked your slide about the languages between the standards. I was wondering, what's the status of your DCAT AP profile in terms of, let's say, maturity? Is there, I mean, can we already have a look at it and see if it would be usable straight away, or can it change still until the end of your project? Because I believe, I mean, it plagues our metadata as well. Yeah. And if there was a sort of agreement, that would be great. But of course, if you're not finished yet.
Yeah. As I said, we're right now in version 0.8. We do expect to have new versions, obviously. End of July, I think where the point is that we're going to release the documentation. The ontology with the shackle and the TTL files is already available. My mistake, I should have put there the GitHub that we're using. But we will make sure that all the documentation and everything is released and announced through public lists so that we get the feedback. This is very important for us. So I think, yes, we can definitely exchange it also with you if you want. Yeah.
Any other questions? Bert.
I was triggered actually more in the beginning with you with an introduction. So I recently saw a presentation about farmers that are actually sharing their information about how the soil is used and the growing of their goods and so on into the fertilizers industry and so on. So this kind of feedback loop of the data, of the use of the information, of the actually that the goods that you use. So you mentioned of if you have a conversation with a help system or something like this, that these recordings could be shared to do the trainings, etc. Is there extra need for policy, or like in the health that is more security and saying at the end, this recording can be used to train your things or something? Is this something that you need, or is just more the awareness of those companies, or to share that this is a possibility to share? What do you think?
I would say it's more of awareness. When it comes to non-personal, non-sensitive data that has been created by a specific company or a specific organization, anything, it's up to them, it's their data, so they can decide to share them for money or not for money, on specific restrictions. One of the things that we're discussing in language data space, for instance, is EU location. You might not want to share your data with an American company, yes, and that can be enforced by the policies. So it's up to them to decide how to do that. If it's personal or sensitive data, we ask them to mark this on the data set, on the metadata, so that we know that. And they could ask, for instance, yes, we can share the data, but only after it's anonymized. So you go through an anonymization process, and only then you allow it to be shared.
Sebastian Glass from Germany. I would like to know whether you cover also translations. So can you mark down the quality of translations or the origin, whether it's automatic translation or human interaction? What about translation?
Okay, quality of data is a big discussion. As I said, we don't expect data providers, to be honest, to say much about the data quality. Plus, data quality is something that has to do with the purpose for which your data sets are being shared. If I'm creating this is the classic example we have in the language data space. Some of you may have heard it. If I'm planning to create a spelling error, spelling checker, sorry, a corpus full of spelling errors is perfect for me. The data quality for everyone else would be bad. If I'm planning, for instance, to, in your case, for machine translation, if I'm planning to use something for evaluation, yes, I need to have a gold standard corpus. So we will have the properties there. I'm not sure who's from the data quality vocabulary are going to be there. Who's going to input these metadata properties remains to be seen. I know that our community is changing. Slightly by slightly, I think most people will add this information. Hopefully. It's not mandatory yet. Okay? Another thing that didn't exist before, synthetic data. Now people ask, is this a synthetic data or not? Again.
Alex?
Thanks. One comment and one question. So the comment, maybe large language models can help satisfy the requirement that you mentioned about interconnecting the different data spaces, as the language data space can help generate LLM. So there is this bidirectional relationship probably between the two. And currently the Data Spaces Support Center and the Strategic Stakeholder Forum in particular is looking into this. There is one of the collaborative papers where we also sit, which is on that topic, precisely to define what is the link and how those two different concepts and developments can actually reinforce each other. Then the question, you mentioned integrating a lot of this data, which is big data, of course, coming from different sources. I was wondering when listening to the presentation, what kind of computational infrastructure would be needed, because you really need something quite sophisticated, I suppose. I was thinking maybe EuroHPC or Lumi, or where does this actually run in order to be able to train those models at scale?
Okay, one thing at a time. The language data space is for collecting the data, first of all, and the data reside on its, following the data space principles, resides on the data providers' infrastructures. They need to have full control of their data space. When it comes to training, this is something that we're still discussing with the European Commission. It's not part of the language data space to do the training. It's our mandate is to create the platform and the marketplace for exchanging, for sharing data that can be used for training. So yes, that will be the next step. Push the European Commission to devote some infrastructure, computational infrastructures, into the training of the LLMs.
Clear, maybe just a reaction here. Infrastructures there are. I think it's not a EuroHPC, joint undertaking, etc. There are also governance and technical questions related to how to move the data, to interconnect, to federate. I think this would be very important.
Especially with personal sensitive data, you have to make sure that you do not violate any rules or anything. Yeah.
I see that there are no other questions, so thank you very much, Penny.
Thank you.
And we go to our proceed with our next presentation about the procurement, public procurement data space. We have two colleagues here, Mark Christopher Schmidt and Jose Pedro Florenga, from that we're going to present us the work that is going on there. I know that we're quite late on time, but I think that all the discussions and the presentation are super interesting. So, Mark Christopher, the floor is yours.
So many thanks. My name is Mark Christopher. You can just say MC. It's the shorter version. It's easier. I have a few slides on the business to explain why the PBDS, the Public Procurement Data Space, exists, and then we have actually the interesting part explained to you by JP. So why do we need the PBDS, the use case of the PBDS, and of course the way forward of the Public Procurement Data Space? So why do we need the PBDS? Public procurement, we have 250,000 public buyers in Europe that procure every year for 2 trillion euros in Europe, which is roughly 14% of GDP. So they have a huge amount of force of how to procure into infrastructure, education, health, and waste. We have available on our site through Tenders Electronic Daily, because public authorities have to procure or have to publish notices above a certain threshold on the central system operated by the Publications Office, and the rest resides in the different systems. And the PBDS actually has the role to gather all this requirement, all the other data, but it is on a voluntary basis. So what the PBDS does is actually it will give easy access to a lot of public procurement data to all kinds of user groups. It will improve the monitoring of public procurement. In the EU, it will reinforce transparency. It will help on improving data quality, which is very important. We heard this aspect many times today, and it's also an issue in public procurement. It will raise awareness about the level of competition. That is generally something that we see it's declining in Europe, that there's less and less competitions or more and more single bids. And what I find very interesting, and I have the feeling from the other presentations also, that the way you discuss with member states about data has changed completely. If you would have spoken with member states, let's say 5 years ago, about data, they would have said, I'm not interested in that. Now everybody speaks about it, and I think this is a good thing. And we had also many times today, there are many open source solutions. Or the solutions that we are providing will also be open source. For the use case of the PBDS, we will, in the beginning, have 3 main use cases. The first one will be monitoring the public procurement market through dashboards. We have data quality measurements. So we tag the data that we import, and that is a huge difference from other data spaces. For the time being, we actually have all the data available on our side also. In the future, this might change. And we will measure strategic procurement. Strategic procurement, when we say this word, it means green, social, and innovative procurement. So for the use case of monitoring of the market, you see on the left-hand side how we do this in a very old-fashioned way in the scoreboard provided by DG Grow. On the right-hand side, you see actually a dashboard from the public procurement data space, or we have a European map, and you see on the left-hand side filters, and you can actively work with the data. So this is the use case of monitoring of the market. When it comes to the data quality, we actually check for completeness of the data. So is the data provided? Is the data valid? Is it consistent? And is it accurate? Because you can have information provided, and I just give you one example. We have a lot of contract values which have the value of 1 cent, which of course, technically it is okay. It is complete, but it is actually not accurate. and we will show this through the quality dashboard. So we will show actually publicly to the end users, to the member states, to the buyers, whoever is interested in our data space, how this looks like. And last but not least, it's this is the dashboard, or this is an example of charts that we use for the dashboard on strategic procurement, where you can see how actually member states or how buyers actually procure green, social, or innovative. And this never existed before. And we hope that with this strategic procurement monitoring, we actually support the member states or support the buyers to be more greener, more social, or more innovative. From the way forward, we will stabilize currently the PBDS. We will go live this summer. Currently, the aim is to go live end of August. We have actually a PBDS day, which we'll have in the future every year, which we call the first one, the grand opening, on the 24th of September. So if you are interested to join, please register. Then end of this year and beginning of this year, we will onboard other countries. It has huge advantages. So what we do is actually, some member states say, we have the data, but we don't have the capacity to give you the data or to map the data. So we say, don't worry, we take this over. So they just have to tell us where we can find the data, and then the rest is on us. And actually, this is a high incentive for member states to share the data with us. We have a good community. Tomorrow we have another community meeting with not only with member states, but also with buyers. There were even sometimes citizens there and suppliers. So we have all kinds of stakeholders. And I think there was a question in one of the presentations before the break was about end user requirements or user stories. What is relevant? And it's important to get their input and also to see how those different end user groups talk to each other. So we have this tomorrow. And then, of course, in the future, we will further stabilize this. We will use a lot of AI in the future with the data that we have. And for the MOU that we have with the member states, we actually have a dedicated section on AI. Because they have to, we hope that they will agree that we can use their data to use it for AI. And last but not least, we will, of course, provide several kinds of services in the public procurement data space to support various end user groups. So, for example, that a citizen in Antwerp can look on how green is my city. And I think that was it already from my side. So I can hand over to JP.
Okay, very well. So now that Mark has set up the stage, let the fun part begin. And let me start by sharing with you, sorry for that. Let me start by sharing with you some numbers so you can have a grasp of the size of the challenge. First of all, I believe it's this one here, yeah. First of all, we currently have 5 different data sources. That's 5 members of the PPDS sharing data with us, and this accounts for more than 30 data models. So first of all, what we need to do is harmonize that data because it's coming in, again, wide range of different formats, and we want to use that. And to do that, we harmonize that under a common data model that is a procurement ontology, which aims at being the common procurement vocabulary for exchanging procurement data in the European Union. Then,
maybe just to add on this, the EPO actually comes from the Publications Office. So they started many, many years ago to work on this, and now we are actually using it.
Yeah, indeed, that's one interesting point as well, because as far as we know, the PPDS will be the biggest user for that ontology, so we are currently facing some challenges, and I'm sure we will face some more. But well, it's the what we have to play with. Then next step. As Max says, there is, well, and actually this has been shared by other colleagues before, one important point in the data spaces is data quality. And Mark has already hinted that, but the PPDS, it's somehow a different data space, meaning that we are storing the data, we are also in charge, as I just mentioned, of harmonizing the data. So we are in the position of well, ensuring a higher data quality for that. I will elaborate maybe on that a little bit afterwards of the technology we use for that. Here again, some just numbers so you can understand. This is the number of business rules that Mark has just mentioned, covering these dimensions, consistency, accuracy, timeliness, etc. Next step, guarantee the correct integration of the data. Again, we have 5 data sources. Some data might have already been provided because we indeed consume data as well from member states, and the publications office plus other internal sources. So we need to be able to integrate all those data, identify duplications, and get profit from them. Once we have all the data with related quality measure, it's correctly integrated again. The last step indeed is inventory all the resources we have, enable the data discovery. And here, well, we are not different from other data spaces. There is a small plot twist. I will elaborate on that later. But we currently have, as I said, 5 data sources, so 5 data catalogs integrating the PPDS data catalog overall. Okay, having said that, let me start with you a diagram of the actual solution. As you can see, we have included some small icons detailing the technology of the different components. I will go quickly through all of them, but maybe just let me elaborate on this one, because I'm sure you are familiar with the other icons. But this one, DSB, stands for Data Space Builder, which is an internal entity data asset that we are using to speed up the space building. Okay, so let me explain this diagram, starting with the data story, how the data comes to the PPDS and how we process it. And as you can see, there are some numbers in the boxes. Let's start with number 1. What is the MOU? MOU stands for Memorandum of Understanding. And this is the technical representation of the actual Memorandum of Understanding signed between the PPDS governance body and the members during their onboarding. And here, well, unsurprisingly, what we said are the what the data providers specify what data they want to share with us. They also specify access, restrictions, provisions, etc. I will elaborate on the semantic format later. That is, again, not a surprise for you. And then let's jump to the box number 2, which is the data collection. One, we know what data we are going to consume, how we are going to consume, and from where we are going to consume it. We need to actually gather the data. For this, we use well, an NiFi implementation, collecting the data from the different data sources that, again, can be as wide as just REST APIs, FTP servers, which is actually, and here I'd like to underline a risk that I believe we are all facing when developing data spaces, and it's data availability, because the reliability of these sources can be limited again. Once we have collected the data, what we do then is perform what we call the semantic data management, and this is first the transformation of this data, because again it comes in different formats. When we have transformed it, we well, perform other operations like the semantic quality assessment, the data curation, and publication. There is also a smaller step that it's not included here, that it's called data enrichment, and there we actually translate some fields to the to English when not available in English. One, all this data and all these artifacts are processed and produced. We integrate them, and later on we publish it in what we call the PPDS knowledge graphs. There is a small division here, what we call the public procurement knowledge graph and the ancillary public procurement knowledge graph. This is due to the fact that there are some fields that might not be publishable as per the regulation after, and not before a set of, well, a number of years. And actually, I've not included this, sorry for that, but everything is stored in a virtuoso instance. So that's the technology behind. One, we have all the information persisted. To get profit of that, we have our own set of visualization tools. Yeah. Okay. And later on, users can access to that using the PPDS web portal and other internal tools. So let me zoom it very quickly in the actually interesting part, the semantic format. So for expressing these permissions, access condition, etc., we use ODRL. More precisely, this memorandum of understanding is an actual implementation of ODRL agreement. And then I'd like to focus a little bit more in this other part, the metadata catalog, because for this, and this is the plot twist, we are not producing our own application of ticket, but we are relying on the base registries ticket application profile that it's developed and maintained by our host here, SEMIC initiative. About the first point, I will not elaborate on this because I think it has been sufficiently explained by the speakers before, the importance and the usefulness of ZCAT. Let me maybe elaborate a little bit on why base registries ticket application profile. First of all, for those who are not familiar with the standard, it's one key piece on the Access to Base Registries initiative, which aims to enable seamless interoperability and communication between base registries. This is, again, registries where basic information such as people data, company registrations, vehicle registrations is stored and maintained. So, okay, this means that we will have available some extended properties that we can benefit from that are particular to these base registries informations. We will get profit and be in turn enable as well this action I've just mentioned, meaning that we will facilitate interconnection with national base registries and the creation we will benefit from the creation of this one-stop platform, let's say. I've included here the data model, but this is maybe more to support your questions. Let me just maybe highlight some facts. First of all, we are lucky to be able to use the BREC ticket specification as it is. So far, we haven't identified any additional need that the model doesn't provide to us. It's true that there are some limitations, and I will elaborate on that just a moment after. But so far, what is the most important value for us here, for the PPDS? It's the rich definition of these boxes here that define the participants, because we indeed have, well, our members are usually, I mean, they are not usually, but they are public organizations which have in turn public services from where they publish the data. This can again be quite complex because these public services can be of a private and public nature, because we could have private companies, as it is the case for Austria, that are providing this public service. That might not be widely understood, and it's maybe not sufficiently explained or reflected in the BREC TCAT documentation. It's maybe an additional use case that might be considered. And let me then finish, I believe 2 minutes left, with the next steps. So what are the challenges we face by using a BREC TCAT AP? First of all, well, there is a planned an upcoming release, an upgrade from Directive 2.10 to 3.00, and we need to understand and see how this is going to be implemented so we can migrate to that. We also depend on the core vocabulary evolution because that is being used by the Directive specification, but also we are relying on that also to depict the entities elsewhere. And then we also face this integration of new kind of participants. This is, as Mark mentioned before, what we are aiming at is at expanding the PPDS so we can harness the actual value of the procurement data. So that might pose some challenges. Like we did with Austria, we will need to understand better the specification and see if it can meet our needs. And okay, I think I'm in time. Thank you very much, and I'm looking for your questions.
Thank you so much, both of you, for this very different presentation about a specific domain. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, please, Albert.
Yeah, I've seen the architecture. I have a couple of doubts and one comment. So you mentioned ODRL component. Is this component already existing?
What do you mean? What are you expecting me to answer? What, because this component, what we mean with this,
yes,
is it's not a component, but it's actually an artifact. Let's say the memorandum of understanding. Yeah. So what?
Imagine that you have an ODRL defined policy. How do you enforce it?
Okay. Okay, that's a very good point, and it's something we're struggling with. I mean, not for the moment, because for the time being, as I mentioned before, the PPDS is very particular in this sense. It's the participants are participating on a voluntary basis, but since the data is accessible through the services we are providing the wide public with, we have the means to ensure that those policies are respected up to a certain point. And now, what we are struggling with, and this is, I think, Athena, for what you mentioned before, because we were currently discussing that this morning about the licensing and how we can enforce that. Just one thing, bear in mind that all data contained by the PPDS is public. And
yeah, no, but my question is very much simpler. Do you have a software component for parsing a ODRL definition and enforcing? Do you have that component?
What I can say is that up to a certain extent, yes, and it fits our needs so far.
Okay, so you can share to me if you have. The next question is that I guess that for the metadata catalog, are you using this metadata catalog with BREC-DCAT AP?
Correct.
Are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Just one thing, because again, we are providing access to the participants and we are controlling who the participants are. So that's why we are able to ensure, from the legal point of view, what the use of the data will be. This is.
Yeah, but my point is that I was asking anybody telling me, I have this software for enforcing ODRL, and then I will jump onto this because I want to see something.
Okay, so as you can see, the answer is yes, up to a certain point, but no. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I believe you want to hear something that I want to hear as well.
Okay.
We haven't found that.
Exactly.
Well.
So we're in the same ship.
Yeah.
And the last point is that what infrastructure are you going to use for 2 billion triplets in Virtuoso?
We're aiming to use clusterized Virtuoso, and it's something that we are struggling with indeed. It's been hard.
You will struggle, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay. I know. But in any case, just one thing that's a future projection.
I have a question rather on the BREC-DCAT AP. Is it true that there will be, to Pavlina, are we sure that there will be a new version of BREC-DCAT AP following the 2019?
First of all, we just released the DCAT AP version 3. So since it is considered a DCAT AP, first of all, we are very happy to see that the DCAT AP is in use, and because we were not aware of who is using actually BREC DKTP. And the idea is every time that we are publishing an official version of DKTP, also to update all of the related sub variations of DKTP. So, for example, there is no need to update for a high-value dataset because it's already compliant, and also it was mentioned. But yes, one step is to see also for the BREC DKTP what is need to be done. Yes.
So, will there be a working group with member states participating, or?
There is an existing working group on BREC DKTP, which has a very where some participants are common on DKTP, but we can launch the process also, which in forthcoming months, I think, from September and forth.
Okay, thank you.
A simple question. It appears that we all agree that DCAT is what we have to use to make the EU spaces interoperable for cataloging assets. Is there this somewhere in one official legal act? Okay, that was the simple question.
Not explicitly, this is a recommendation, but it's not legally. Okay, there is no legal text that makes the DKTP mandatory. Kun, so wants to say something.
Yeah, just to come back to the presentation starter, Article 33, the Data Act, which talks about FAIR principles, including findability of data. That puts us in a position, and that's what we have been doing, to place a standardization request. And this standardization request would be the way then also to say, well, this is the way to make your data findable, read DCAT. And so that's the intention, and we have to kind of we are in the early stage of this process now. And of course, there are some questions that also come up on the governance, because clearly, currently the governance is largely done in the communities that we have heard today. And how does that then work if you start collaborating with the European Standardization Organization? So so on that level, we need to iron out some things, but clearly that would be the way rather than putting it in an X potentially. We're trying to first do this with standardization, basically.
Pascal, and to complement this, we are. It is a very difficult exercise overall, and several issues needed to be taken under consideration. First of all, how Commission laws are protected and well served, existing communities, the aspect of reuse. So it's something that need to be discussed and taken thoughtfully under consideration.
So my question was really, when you onboard stakeholders, there are some stakeholders coming with their own metadata standards, and they are fighting to promote their metadata standards. And you have to tell them, I'm sorry, but have a look. You should understand that DCAT is the way to go. And here, I would like to really clarification. So we can tell them, you can map your metadata model to DCAT, because of course we don't ask you to change everything. If your metadata model is really well fitted for your domain, it's fine. But to achieve the interoperability within the data spaces, we need DCAT. But it will be nice to have a real clarification, say, okay, we are not going to discuss this anymore. It's like also what you showed, I like the Article 33, because also in the regulation, there's an important Article 33. It's about publicly open. When we discuss about code lists in health, there are plenty code lists. Not all of them are publicly open.
Yes, I think Antoine was something. No.
I'm Martin Bunskov from Denmark. Thanks for this very, very good question, the last question. So can't we just put a standard into legislation? You know the old saying, the only thing that's worse than no standards is bad standards. And as a person who works both on the standardization side and part of, saying, okay, so what should we put in there? I mean, Alex, you also noted how the work from Inspire with OGC and ISO and so on have already shown some way. I think there is a path between good ideas and then some practical validation from reality. And I don't think the standards or the standardization fora will save us. I think it's come from the real practical validation in the work that we have been seeing throughout today. That will be the thing to bet on, and where you would see what to go for on a European level. And hopefully that will end up in meaningful, not too overly complicated standardization, like we have seen the conclusions from Inspire and so on. So just to say, standards will not save us alone.
I would just like to add something we talked about today very often about interoperability, sharing data, and I think sometimes, and we have a lot of data in Europe, and we have to be smart on how we are going to provide this data to the outside world. Because the world, as we know now, is not fair. And there are third countries where we would problematically say, we would not like to share the data with you. In Europe, compared to the rest of the world, is very, very open in many, many ways. So we have to, DCAT is very, very important, but when it comes about findability of what kind of data assets, we have to use it in a clever way. So I was very happy when you said, who can access the data? Who should use the data? I think this is very important.
Go into the policies.
Yeah.
Just make sure that you can at least enforce the access. Yeah, I said that this is something that has to go into the policies, and at least access probably can be enforced computationally up to a point. And this is another point where, I just said, I think this is where we need SIMPL, because this is going to be something that is needed for all data spaces. Yes.
So if there are no other questions, I would like to... no, there is... Sorry.
So you said the world is not fair. I've seen in one of your slides you have analytics. How do you describe in DCAT AP? So data user, web portal, analytics. I would like to know how you're going to put this into your DCAT model. Because in health, we have introduced a new property for this class distribution, saying, okay, here you are going to have dashboards. You are going to have augmented analytics on top of your data, because you are lucky, you have directly the data. So have you thought about having in your DCAT model a property for analytics?
So far, no, that's not included in our use case, because the usage and the findability and the usage of DCAT remains, let's say, in this side. This box here, it's meant to get profit of the different artifacts created and that are indeed defined using DCAT AP, well, direct DCAT AP. But we do not.
There is something. Sorry that I just jump in, but what we do is actually we have dashboards. We have actually we have two versions of it. One that is generated with the public one, and one that is generated with the one that where we have more data. So to ensure that the public one has really only public data. This is how we currently do it.
I don't know if that summarizes it, but the point is that indeed the part of the data, the portion of the data used for analytics to populate that, we are not describing it because we do not expect users to find it. We just don't want to do that. But I mean, it could be a possibility indeed that we can explore. Thank you for that.
This idea is coming from Inspire. You know, in Inspire, you've got the OGC services. It's actually abstraction data layer. When you have a WMS service, you see the data. It's a kind of dashboard, and you will see with all the big data technologies, you will have more and more about these augmented analytic services. So the idea is quite simple. It's not really a distribution of a data set, but it's an abstraction data layer. How do we describe this in DCAT? So in Health DCAT, we thought, okay, let's create a new class for a new property for this.
Ulrika from Sweden. I was just thinking, isn't there a place in DCAT AP where you can describe related resources? I think this is what we use in Sweden for this kind of things.
Okay, thank you so much for all these questions. And we go right now to our final presenters. Timo from Smart Cities for OACAT. Timo will provide us a short presentation. Thank you for your patience.
Hi, so wait, let me see. Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, I want to say I really admire your commitment and your patience. It's always like this at this conference that we're having the good conversations at the end. Unfortunately, I have to rush to the presentation because I need to leave at 6. So I would just want to talk, we've been talking data spaces. I just want to talk about the data space for smart and sustainable cities and communities. So the smart cities data space, sorry. We've seen the health data space, we've seen public procurement. We have seen the language data space, but we haven't seen the Green Deal. And this is actually a data space the Smart Cities data space is a part of, but also the mobility and energy data space is very, very relevant for the smart city policies. So just to say, this is a few of the vertical data spaces that exist in Europe. There are more, and they're not just one single data space, each of them. We like to say that we also have Destination Earth, who is going to create the complete digital twin of the Earth by 2030, which should be data space heaven for us, but there is also something we consider data space hell, is where you go to the local government or regional government, where you have to actually integrate all these verticals and create policies on top of them and to talk to your stakeholders, your utility companies and so forth. So actually, do you really expect a civil servant at the local level to understand all your different vocabularies and to be able to integrate them? So that's where we are trying to work on and make life easier on the local and regional level. That's just an illustration of the problem. So Pavlina asked me to really try and describe how a city or a town even or a regional government can start using semantics to understand, to untangle this entire mess. I've had the lucky experience to be a data manager at the city of Ghent in Flanders. And one of the approaches, well, let's say this is not a full methodology, but a 4-step approach that you can take as a city to be able to work semantically with your data and different verticals. First of all, use an internal data catalog. Very important. Even departments don't speak the same language, so why don't you install a data catalog? It's the first thing any consultant will tell you when you start a data governance project. So have a data catalog. Why not use DCAT and make it semantic? Second is take ownership of data models. We've heard over and over again, when you procure software, the furthest most procurers on a local level dare to go is, yes, and make it open. Well, whatever, but what does it mean in terms of, you know, how do we get our data out of it, what form, what format, what vocabulary should it have? When you go to specify vocabularies, which I don't always recommend, I recommend using minimum interoperability mechanisms, not being very strict in the procurement in terms of vocabularies. But if you do use vocabularies, use ones that exist. I'm preaching to the choir here, I know. And get it into your own databases instead of those of your vendors. So, and ideally, make it a triple store. So this is the 4-step approach. Quick example of how we did it in Ghent. After COVID, Ghent wanted to have larger terraces for businesses, for bars, for restaurants. We're a tourist city. Obviously, this was a way of, one of the relance projects for Next Generation Europe. And so we changed the law, the local legislation on the cost and the size of a terrace for businesses. But of course, business owners didn't know this because when they were looking for, how big can my terrace be, they get onto the Flemish website or God behold, the federal Belgian website, and there's a description of what is the standard terrace policy. It's not X by X meters, and it's much more expensive than we wanted to make it in the city. So how can a local government make it clear to higher levels of government, of other governments, that our policies are different? Well, they can use CPSV, the Core Public Service Vocabulary. It's been around for ages, and this is actually a project we did with Flanders, where we federate. There we go. We use CPSV. The Flemish government aggregates it on an intergovernmental level, and that means that they can publish the exact definitions of the service. This is a very easy but very clear example on how semantics can help local levels. Now, well, we satisfy the 4 points in my 4-step program. Anyway, I'm here to talk about DS4-SSCC, the data space for smart and sustainable cities and communities. It's a federated data space. Obviously, the data spaces will operate on a local and regional level, but we want to exchange information across those data spaces on a European level. We've just launched a call for pilots. So it's a cascaded grant agreement. So we are giving out money to pilots that want to operate a local data space. And basically integrate across a lot of different sectors and verticals. It has to be cross-border. It has to be because utility providers and other organizations are usually cross-border, and we also want them to exchange their experience with other local governments. And they have to make use of a blueprint that has been made in the preparatory action. These pilots will be funded up to 50% for 1.5 million. That means in total they can cost 3. But how are we going to organize the exchange of data within a pilot site? We are going to need a data catalog within each of the pilot sites. And we are going to need authentication and authorization policies. I don't know if Alberto is still here. I don't know if ODRL might be something to use this for. Well, anyway, we don't know yet what is going to work. That's why we're doing a call for pilots, and we are trying to find out what are the best practices on the local level. So we've put a lot of information already in the blueprint, but we are going to evolve this. Obviously, the point here is to create a catalog of solutions that will work over time and in the future as well. Okay, so we've got this figured out. Now, how are we going to federate these pilots across Europe? All right, there again, we are going to use minimum interoperability mechanisms and not set very strict standards on each of these pilots. They have to run it with 50% funding only. So please do not enforce vocabularies on them. They're going to go crazy and they don't have the means to do it. We're going to ask them to adhere to minimum interoperability requirements on each of the sites. And across them, we are going to ask them to use smart data models and at least have some way of semantically interoperating their different data catalogs. MIM1, we suggest mechanisms such as NGS-ILD, LDAS, which we heard a lot about this morning, and SOSA SSN for anything that's sensor related. For MIM2, we suggest to use smart data models. And that's basically it. The open call is now open. Anyone that wants to run a pilot can apply, and it will be in 3 phases and so forth, but you will find all the information on the website. All right, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Timo. Thank you for your patience. Are there any questions for Timo? Quick questions, so that because he has to leave, as he said. Alex.
Always Alex, sorry about that. MIM7 is the question. Is it going to be under the radar of the pilots or not? The location part.
It is tied together with MIM1. So yes, every time they are going to use some way of using geospatial features within their exchange of data, we're going to refer to MIM7. And obviously, you know how it's structured. So there's some choices there, but not too many.
Any other question? No?
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, in any case, we're very open for your feedback and can discuss later. Just get in touch through ds4sscc.eu. Right, thank you.
All right. From my side, I would like in order to sum up, I think that this workshop, even though it showed very different use cases in the different domains, I think it highlighted common problems and the challenges that are of the different data spaces, and I think that is also food for thought and a good starting point for sharing knowledge and exchange expertise and have this desired cross-border cross-data space interoperability. And from the Commission side is also a good source of information how we will proceed and how we can help on this this big challenge, because of the variety of problems and through the different data spaces is so big that even from my side, I realized it only after hearing the presentation. So I would like to thank all the speakers for sharing this valuable information, all the audience for their patience, the audience from attending physically and online, as well as all the supporting staff, including the gentleman at the back at the end of the room for make this workshop taking place and be real. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.